welcome to Fresh Face Comics, the comic book podcast, our lifelong comic book reader guides his friends through the world of comics for the first time. My name is Joey Morgan, the aforementioned lifelong reader. With me as always is Jacob Licklider, the aforementioned newbie. I'm going through this really fast because I'm excited for today. Hi, Jacob.
This makes me want to read the Bible in
no,
a weird fucking way.
No, it doesn't. There's no way. There's no way, Jacob.
There's a way, because Garth Ennis is technically taking certain parables and twisting them, I think, at least a little bit. Fuck it. Say what we're doing. Say what we're doing.
I don't know if you can tell this about me. I've never read the Bible. But I have read the comic we're talking about today, which is Preacher. Preacher by Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. Preacher. It's Preacher. It needs no introduction. But if it did have an introduction, Jacob, I believe it would be the one that you're about to give us.
Yeah. So, this is a Vertigo book. It is written for adults, and I need to do a big content and trigger warning for...
I'm sorry, Jacob, I'm sorry. Usually I take your content warnings very seriously, but I have to laugh as you say what you're about to say.
I'm trying my best to get through this long fucking list with a straight face, because it is insane.
Did you make a list? Did you write it out?
Yeah. And I don't know if... I still don't know if I got everything. Sexual assault, rape, incest, possibly pedophilia, zoophilia, and just excessive violence and several slurs, both racial, ableist, and homophobic.
I think that about covers it.
That covers everything.
So Preacher. So Preacher. Jacob, I guess getting into our non-spoiler section, as always, if you can, tell me what Preacher is about.
I mean, to sum it up, Garth Ennis doesn't like the Catholic Church.
This is true. This is very true.
I mean, and American evangelicals.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of things. There are a lot of things Garth Ennis doesn't like.
Garth Ennis doesn't... It might be easier to list the things that Garth Ennis likes.
True. He does. You two share, I believe, a pretty big comic book opinion in that.
Yes, we both love Superman.
You share the same favorite superhero in the form of Superman. Yeah, he loves Superman. I think I know you were very apprehensive to go into anything Garth Ennis. Which I understand. He has a certain reputation, and
but let's be honest, not an undeserved reputation. Okay, I'm going to say this up top. I think Preacher Book 1 is good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is good.
Yeah,
bordering on great.
Great book.
There are 3 issues that Ennis makes me incredibly frustrated, and yet they're not the darkest issues. Well, I mean, those issues also make me frustrated for different reasons. But there's a middle story arc here that, I'm going to be honest, is holding this first book back in terms of narrative.
I suppose that's fair. I do think the second story arc, this book is split into 3 story arcs. The second arc, which is the shortest and the middle one, it's not great. It is just about the only truly forgettable Preacher story arc, I would say. Which is saying something, because it is, as you can tell, a very memorable book. It is... It is. I would. While I don't love it, I would say the second story arc is necessary, to do what Ennis wants to do with the book. But not just Ennis, because we do have art by Steve Dillon throughout it. Steve Dillon's a great artist. I think you knew this already. I think you're slightly familiar.
Steve Dillon is an artist I was oddly familiar with because of Doctor Who comics.
Yes.
Yeah. Weird connection. I know.
Yeah, especially considering the subject matter that the late great Steve Dillon is drawing for in both forms. Very different. Also, great covers throughout this by Glenn Fabry. Glenn Fabry is an artist we've also seen a little bit of before, back when we did Nightfall. A wonderful sort of painted style, permeates all these covers that I think is really, if nothing else, tells you, I think, very much the vibe of this book. Glenn Fabry does a great job of just selling the book to people, and goddamn, does this book sell? Yeah.
I'm honestly surprised.
This book was very popular.
I'm surprised at how popular it was.
Massive book. This came out in 95. It started releasing in 95.
So right in the middle of the edginess of the 90s, like
Yeah.
right smack dab in the middle.
Importantly, I would say 2 years after the death of Superman, one of the only comics ever to have made mainstream media coverage. In the same way, so did Preacher. Preacher was also getting mainstream news coverage in many ways because it was so damn controversial. And
I was going to say, I imagine it was probably the religious right. Like,
yeah, yeah. We're talking like people heard of a popular comic called Preacher, which one might assume by the title is potentially a religious book. Evangelicals got their hands on this thing, read exactly 2 words, I imagine, and were like, "This is awful."
I was going to say, how does this thing? What's the first page of this thing? Give me a second.
Okay, yeah, sure. Actually, yeah. Let's see how long it takes.
Well,
okay. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, page 2.
You know, page one is not that bad.
Page 2 has a character blaspheming, so that might.
Yeah, honestly, not that bad up until you get to the flashbacks, I would say. But more on that when we get to spoilers, of course. We'll talk about all that later. Yeah, this is a very controversial and as such very popular book. By the time that it got on the radar of higher ups at DC, it was too popular to cancel. And so Garth Ennis was able to go all the way through, tell his story beginning, middle, and end. And so we have Preacher. So we have a very let's call it seminal book from 90s DC and Vertigo. And also because this is, I think, the first thing we've ever read that is not part of a larger comics universe. Although this was published under DC and Vertigo, this is not part of the DC universe. It doesn't have any references to those larger comic book universe things that we've been reading for so long.
I mean, it technically has a couple of nods. Like there is a point where a character wears a Batman, like
yeah, yeah,
but it's not. It is what helps is that it isn't part of the DC universe. It isn't like, say, Hellblazer, which started out as a John Constantine started out very much as a DC character and then slowly got phased out into his own thing after a while before being folded back in. This is purely separate. It'll be very curious to see how well this episode does, because this is one of those we're doing something separate, and despite getting a fairly successful television adaptation, I wouldn't necessarily call this mainstream.
Certainly not really anymore, but people.
I was going to say this isn't like our Invincible bonus episode where Invincible's made into a very successful animated series.
Yeah. And the Preacher TV show is popular, and it was actually how I became familiar with Preacher. It certainly didn't reach the heights that, say, like Invincible has. So that is interesting. And also, I would say the Preacher TV show, I'm sure I'll make a fair few references to throughout, adapts this comic in a really interesting way. I know I was telling you a little bit about it, but like the last arc of this book that we're about to cover is the basis of like the entirety of season 3 in the show. It's very weird. It's a very strange adaptation, though mostly faithful, mostly through the casting and the way that show portrays these characters, because Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon were executive producers on that show, or at least Steve Dillon was up until he died, I think, during season 2. But yeah, so they had a hand in the show. And what else? There's something else I wanted to bring up, and I can't think of what now.
Well, okay, so I do actually want to say, because I do think Ennis may not like organized religion, but I get the feeling that philosophically he likes some sort of spiritualism. Like,
that's interesting. I think certainly not any traditional like Catholic or Christian God. If that's
no. I think he has. I mean, he has several philosophical points where he does not like the Christian God, but he seems to like the power of people. I think. That's
fair. That's fair.
It's tricky. It's tricky because of the edge.
I said this to you as we were messaging each other about this book, and at one point I said, like, and Garth Ennis is always saying something. Sometimes it can just be very hard to tell what he's trying to say because of the way he presents his stories.
It's also very possible that he may not be trying to say something at points, and
I would say at least throughout this first book, I think there's always something that he's saying on some level. But we'll talk about that more in spoilers. I will also say last episode, and when I revealed to you what this book was, that I did say there was a fairly famous scene in this book that caused a higher up at DC to toss his book at the ceiling and make a dent in his ceiling. I'm curious if you had an idea of what that scene was.
Here's the problem. It could be several scenes.
It could be several scenes. I'll say this, it comes from the last arc of this volume.
Is it the villain of that arc's eventual fate?
No, actually. No?
Okay.
Well, when we get to it, I'll point it out in spoilers, but I'm very, very excited to see your reaction to that. All right. Let's get into some Blue Sky questions, though. We are over on Blue Sky where we do our Q&As. If you want to follow us to participate in these Q&As, I am on Blue Sky at jomobloodonut.bluesky.social. Jacob is on Blue Sky at newt5996 at bluesky.social. There'll always be link trees to our Blue Skies in the description below. You can follow us on various social medias. And there's all that. First comes from our good friend Kian at Kian the Quark .bluesky.social. Continuing our long-standing tradition.
He's doing a bit, and I don't think the bit works for this.
I think it does. Preacher ? With Roger Delgado as the priest, as a priest in Doctor Who's The Daemons. I would actually, when I first saw that Keen had replied saying Preacher ? I thought it was going to be the guy from The Curse of Fenric. Was where my mind was first going to.
I mean, that's because... Okay, here's the thing. Do you think Kean's actually read Preacher?
Not at all. Not at all.
I was going to say... I'm like,
yeah. Next from our friend Rules Panda at Joey Can Read This .bluesky.social says religion ?
It's a gift. Mind you, it's a gift from the Muppets Take Manhattan.
Yes, and a wedding, of course, which makes sense in a church. I think is the important part there. But yes, I guess one could say that the Muppets is organized religion in a way. I certainly worship them. Next we have from our friend Andrew at Andrew Doing Art .bluesky.social says Garth Ennis has a mixed reaction these days. Are you more on the love it side, the hate it side, or somewhere in between with his work? Which is an interesting question, I think, because Andrew says these days, and I don't think Garth Ennis has ever not received a mixed reception or been a controversial figure in his entire career. He has always tried to elicit some kind of reaction out of people, for better and for worse. But I don't know, Jake, where do you lie on? What side, having gone through an entire volume of Preacher?
I mean, he frustrates me, like...
Understandable.
Throughout the damn thing, because it's the trouble of, there's a lot of good in here, but a lot of the edge is just...
I think
in ways actively harming it.
I think it is counterproductive to treat edge in a story like an inherently bad thing. I wouldn't agree with that take personally.
The man is pushing an envelope in places that
when that is
too far.
Like when that is the premise of the book, I'm not sure there's really a point to be made when you say it's too much. It's almost like I think a great example would be like Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where the premise of the show is these are horrible people. If they're going too far, then they're not really honoring the premise of the show by having them be awful people the entire time. And when the premise of this book is insanity, just Garth Ennis commenting on so much here, and trying to do and say so much, but also just be the most insane book on the market at the time, and quite possibly ever. I
was going to say, I feel like it's only going to get more insane from here.
You are correct. I was surprised actually rereading this. There's absolutely no nudity in this first volume. There's none.
I was expecting more writing with one hand.
Yeah, no. This is no. There's no nudity at all in this first volume. It's certainly there in volume 2, and from that point on. But no, it's not here at all, which is fascinating. But anyway, last set of questions come from our friend Mason at the GD256.bluesky.social says, "Hello, I'm hungover." Sorry, Mason. get better. One, Jacob, is this as good as Joey makes it out to be? I would like to step in before Jacob answers this question, actually. I don't think I've ever hyped up the book a lot, have I? Like,
you have.
Not to you, I don't think, because I've always known of your apprehension to Ennis as a writer. So I don't think I've ever tried to hype up the book for you. Knowing that, like, I think trying to hype it up would almost lead to you disliking it more. So I don't know. I don't think I ever have done that for you. Have I?
You've hyped it. You've hyped it. You've hyped the show. You've hyped.
I don't even think this is the greatest Garth Ennis thing I've ever read. Like, it's great. It's a great book. It really is.
Is the greatest Garth Ennis thing you've read? Is that? Please say it's Punisher Max and.
No, it's Hellblazer. His Hellblazer.
Oh right, I always forget that he has a.
How can you forget? That's a God of Vertigo. Yeah, it's great. I love it. Punisher Max is up there. I think Punisher Max and Preacher are tied personally. I do love Punisher Max. That's great. Anyway, Mason then says, describe this series in 3 words.
Batshit insanity.
Can't disagree. Mason's third question says, does this series bring you closer to God? I'm considering recommending it to my grandma. You should, Mason. It does bring me closer to God, certainly. God is literally a character in the book. So I would say yes, I think it does. And I think you should definitely have your grandmother read this. His fourth and final question says, what soundtrack would you give this story, whether it be an artist or genre? I think there's a very easy answer to that for me. It is literally the song, the lyrics of the song that open the entire book, Time of the Preacher, which is from the greatest country album of all time, The Red-Headed Stranger. It is a fantastic album by Willie Nelson that I listen to at least once a month. I don't even listen to country regularly. That is the only album that I have ever listened to of country in its entirety. And it's perfect. I think it's a great sound for whatever I think of this book. Yeah, I don't know. That's me personally. Jacob,
I'd also say I'd say Western soundtracks because there's a lot of Western influence here. That's very explicit, as well as specifically Tarantino needle drops. Like,
yeah, totally.
This has the tone of a Tarantino film. Like,
yeah, that's fair. Yeah, which also probably does have a lot to do with my enjoyment of it.
Yeah, because it's fascinating because you love Tarantino. I have seen
three Tarantino films. Yeah,
3 of his films. Yeah, and liked all 3. But still have, like, again, honestly, like Ennis, some reservations.
I think also when you say that, you're casting more aspersions on the person making it than the media itself. Like, at least that's the way I'm reading it, like the way you're approaching it. I'm not trying to say anything bad about you or anything when I say that, but it's I think in a way, oh God. We almost know too much about the people behind the stuff that we enjoy. I think that's more the point I'm trying to make, is that I often try to enjoy things just as they are. I like to go in as blind as possible when I read or watch something. And you know, if
I usually don't. I'm always curious as to who made this. What are they trying to say with it? And that's just sort of.
Would it not be more interesting to find that out afterwards, though? Like, rather than being more almost spoiling yourself on what you're about to see or read, you know?
I don't think so. I think it's a good practice in terms of analysis, because I do try to bring some analysis even to things like terrible things we covered, like Dark Knight Strikes Again. And in my personal, like, Star Trek reviews, I try to figure out, like, okay, what was actually trying to be said with an episode, versus what actually ended up on screen. It's very much just sort of the way my brain operates.
Sure, but I mean, I feel like doing all that research into something ahead of time does color your opinion before you actually experience the art.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't...
Like, surely that's taking away from the experience of the art itself.
Maybe, but I also don't do as much, like, I don't do a whole lot of pre-research. A lot of it comes to, especially if it's something like this that I'm reading for the podcast, it might be during, while I'm reading, or after. I'm like, especially if I have questions. Preacher is one of those things that made me look. Again, it may be telling that we agree on what the weakest arc is, and what I think the most problematic arc is that middle fucking arc where it's like, what are you? Because I think that's very much and we'll get into this in spoilers. You've made the case for it being about one thing when it translates to some very different things. Perhaps.
Well, I think we also agreed in text ahead of time that like both of those things can be true. Like,
yes,
it can be about both of those. It can be the thing that I'm reading it as, and also be problematic in the way that you're reading it. Which I think is just a great transition into our spoiler section. Let's talk spoilers.
Wait, hang on. We missed a question. You missed a question.
Did I miss a question?
Rules Panda had another one that was on my quote.
Oh no. Okay, I'll read it off. What we got?
Yeah.
Oh, you're not reading it? I'll read it.
Oh, you want me to? Sorry, I thought you said I'll read it off. No, I can read it off. I'll read it here.
Yeah. Okay, I got it. Don't worry, I got it. So tell me, do you know of Garth Ennis's greatest creation, his masterpiece, what will go down in history? Was too much even for James Gunn, Dog Welder? I don't know.
And we're not. You know what? Knowing Garth Ennis, we're not going to Google this because no, Joey, we're not.
Is that a Hitman thing? That might be a Hitman thing. I've not read Hitman. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, all right. Anyway, let's talk spoilers. Spoilers. All right. Consider this your official spoiler warning. If you don't want to stick around for spoilers, go to the end of the episode. Find out what we're covering next time on the podcast.
And next couple of times because we have to start
yeah. The next 2 episodes. Yeah, we're revealing the next 2 episodes. Go check that out. As always, our link trees to our socials and everything will be in the description below. You can follow us wherever you want to follow us.
For once, I don't think I have a guess because
you gotta have a guess, Jacob. You gotta guess at least one of them. Come on.
I haven't prepped because you didn't give me any hints.
I will also say, I haven't given you any hints. Yeah, because this is we'll talk about it. Anyway, as always, there will also be Amazon links to the books we covered today and are covering next time on the podcast in the description below. You can find the Amazon links to those there. And without further ado, I think that does it. Let's get into spoilers. Jacob, Preacher number 1. Oh man. Well, okay. Actually, curious. What did you think the first issue was going to be going in?
I wasn't I thought it was going to be kind of like the pilot of the show.
Okay, this is also important context, I think. I previously had this is a couple years ago now. I had you try out the Preacher TV show. I think, was this pre-podcast days even? It might have been.
It probably was a while
back now, yeah. And yeah, you checked out the first 3 episodes?
I want to say 3, maybe 4.
Sounds about right. But yeah, so you were familiar with a little bit of Preacher, sort of, in the way that the show portrays the characters and its setting, which is very different from the structure of the comic. Because I told you that like what season 1 does is it takes an arc from like late on in the comic and uses it as a sort of gateway setting into the show. Whereas this first scene that the comic opens on is the last scene of season 1, which is very interesting. So you had pictured it would be like the pilot of the show. In that case. What did you expect to see in it? What did you expect to happen? What did you think?
I don't know exactly what I expected to happen. I mean, I expected, the Genesis stuff to happen and figuring that out. I wasn't quite expecting. I was expecting by the end of issue 1 to have at least a handle on our 3 main characters and what their deal is. And I think part of it is because I know you said Ennis had a story he wanted to tell. I don't think he had nearly as much of the details worked out. Like,
that's interesting. Yeah, I'd say,
I think he wasn't sure what to do with Tulip for a couple of issues.
That one I actually disagree with, because he clearly knew where she was coming from in the first issue. Maybe not necessarily where she was going, but I would say also, as far as like the overall trajectory of the comic, I would say, and this kind of figures out the ending of the comic somewhere within book 2, when he starts introducing certain characters that are very important to the overall story.
I mean, we should say this entire first book, especially the first and third story arcs, feel like prologue. Like,
sorta.
Yeah, you could honestly. That second arc is a mess because
we could just skim it.
No, because I have things to say.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, we'll talk about it. Anyway, where this comic actually begins is our main 3 characters right off the bat. This is Jesse Custer, Cassidy. We don't know the full name, and Tulip O'Hare, who is sitting in a diner making some vague references to things that have happened in their past, because we are starting the story sort of on a flash forward before we sort of figure out where all of our characters came from.
And the whole idea is Jesse wants to look for God. Quite literally looking for the physical God that is made explicit on page 1. You very much have. We need to establish Garth Ennis doesn't like organized religion. He very much thinks churches, especially in the southern United States, suck. And that he seems to have some pity for alcoholics. And I'll say the opening before the flashbacks is actually fairly good at getting the character dynamics down.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, just starting off the comic simply enough to establish our 3 leads. It's literally just them sitting in a diner making conversation with each other, and it's nice. You get a great idea for who these characters are. I will say also, I'm kind of glad you at least watched a little bit of the show, because there are just certain voices for these characters that live in my head constantly, especially Joe Gilgan's Cassidy voice, which is absolutely perfect. And also Cassidy being a character that certainly, I would argue, if any character in this book is based on Garth Ennis himself, it's Cassidy. He's Irish. He talks the exact way that Garth Ennis talks. It is, if anyone is Garth Ennis himself, it's Cassidy, and I think you can kind of see that at certain points later on in the comic. But we got our flashbacks. Then we see where Jesse came from. He was a reverend in a small town in Texas. We get the title of our first story, The Time of the Priest.
Well, here's the thing: in a small town called Anvil.
Anvil, yes.
Garth Ennis is not subtle.
No, not at all. He doesn't have to be. I know writers who use subtext, and they're all cowards.
They're all cowards. Is Garth Ennis the real life Garth?
Very possibly. Very possibly. So we have Jesse Custer here, who goes to a bar in Anvil, talks to some of the locals around there, and at some point
it's important to say he is Dylan draws him in this sequence as put together in all white and basically had enough with everyone's shit. It's like, okay, I'm the priest. I'm gonna do the thing where I'm going to say, hey, here's everybody's fucking sins. You all suck. You better be at fucking church tomorrow. It's specifically talking about a rapist.
Yeah.
A rapist.
Yeah. He sure calls out a rapist in town, and for that he gets hit on the back of the head with a pool stick, and people start kicking the piss out of him in this bar. And we then have our first scene shift to a little place you might have heard of called Heaven.
Heaven.
Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon's Heaven. I need your thoughts, Jacob.
I mean, it's a choice. I can't tell if if they're doing heaven as a bureaucracy,
I would say partially. We're going with a more, I think, literal manifestation of heaven. In that there are literally like structures. It's like a big
it is
ball
a literal
in the sky,
a literal place.
Mm-hmm. We meet a number of angels here that are investigating the breakout of an entity from heaven here. They're confronted by another angel, where Garth starts establishing more the way in which
hierarchy.
The hierarchy.
It's the hierarchy which he's borrowing. He's borrowing from, I want to say, Dante's Paradiso, the latter third of the Divine Comedy, which is all about heaven. Like,
well, thank you. I actually didn't know where this hierarchy idea sort of came.
Yeah,
from.
No, that's it's some of it's. Okay, this is a book we're going to have to talk theology at it because there's stuff that Ennis is drawing on theologically intentionally, like especially with the whole idea. Like that's kind of the idea. He's some of it literally biblically, some of it I want to say from the Paradiso, probably other sources that I'm not familiar with, because yeah, it's a whole thing. Heaven's always been a hierarchy. Hell's always been a hierarchy. Purgatory is not always been. It's been laid out through mainly the work of Dante Alighieri, which is not meant to be taken theologically literally. The Divine Comedy is mostly a social commentary on people that Dante hates historically, and
I did know that.
Yeah, you're gonna go into. I'm gonna reveal opinions about the church and the general thoughts on religion.
We haven't mentioned this yet. It's important to note that we both are coming at this book from a non-religious perspective. Like neither of us are especially religious.
I was raised Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Am I bringing some baggage that way? Maybe. I won't deny it.
But anyway, they are threatened by our hierarchy of
who is a seraph.
Yeah.
God, it's been too long since I don't remember the actual hierarchy because it's been a while.
Anyway, okay, but they're threatened because of this entity that is broken out of heaven named Genesis, and they're meant to go retrieve it, and so the angels suggest that they go to wake up the Saint of Killers.
So, Joey? I do have to ask: do you know what a saint is, theologically speaking?
Really, theologically, so
you are missing a lot of Ennis's text here. So in the Catholic Church, a saint is a human soul who has died and has made it to heaven.
Oh, wait, I did know that. Yeah.
And is quite literally, and in heaven you are now because you are one with God, confirmed at least through the Catholic Church through verifiable miracles on earth, which I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of miracles because it's a rabbit hole, and there's a reason certain miracles have become less and less spectacular as time has gone on. There's a reason for that. We don't need to get into it, as not to offend potentially religious listeners. But that's the commentary. Like,
I mean, I'm willing to offend religious listeners if you're up for that.
In the Catholic Church specifically, there's a patron saint of pretty much everything. So Ennis is like, okay, what if there's a patron saint of killers?
Which is also
someone you would pray to for help killing.
I will say, eventually, we will get the Saint of Killers backstory and how he comes to exist. I'll be curious to see your thoughts on that when we get to that in a couple of volumes' time. But still. So then go back to sort of our present day stuff. Jesse is still telling his story, and Tulip jumps in because this is where she sort of comes into it all. And she happened to be, let's say, near Anvil around the time where she was in the middle of something that Venice is very vague about. Essentially, Tulip is here trying to kill somebody, doesn't succeed in it, shoots a guy's mouth off, literally. And this is about where Cassidy came into the story, because Cassidy happened to be nearby in a truck, and Tulip, and running away from these guys, jumps into Cassidy's truck, threatens him. He takes her, and they drive away together. He drives her safely.
We should say there's a reason we aren't quoting the dialogue as much in this comic, because
it's so much. I love it.
it is cursing, and like sometimes Ennis rides the line really well. Sometimes he doesn't. A lot of times he doesn't. Issues 5 to 7.
You gotta calm down on 5 to 7, my guy. I don't really like it either. I just you're just being really funny about it right now.
Joey, you don't understand. This book was very close to getting like a 9 out of 10. Being
you gave it like an 8 out of 10, Jake.
Yeah, and that's mainly on the strength of that last arc, because
the last arc is. It's worth noting. The last arc is fucking amazing.
It's very good.
It's so good.
I would have dialed back a couple of things.
Sure you would have, Jacob. Sure you would have. The last arc is perfect, and I will not be taking any.
We don't need the bestiality, Joey.
Yes, you do, Jacob. Yes, you do.
You don't.
Anyway, our one angel Pylo goes to wake up the Saint of Killers. He's immediately killed on opening the Saint of Killers coffin. The Saint of Killers walks out, is this very intimidating cowboy-like figure.
But I will say, one of the coldest lines in the book of, it's this response of, I'm one of the hosts of angels. I never ever thought about sinning. I did everything I was told, and I never complained. And now it ends here in the black pit in the ground with my brains blown out. What do you call that, eh? What do you call that? A good start.
Oh god, I love it. You were also aware you've seen this character portrayed in the TV show by Graham McTavish. Another weird thing the show does is they hide his identity for the entirety of season 1, and then they actually call him the Saint of Killers by the end of the season. It's really weird.
Don't know why.
They also do this weird thing in the show where they make Saint of Killers a strong silent type and don't have him talk much at all. Whereas, like in the comic, like you've seen it, he talks all the time. He has regular ass dialogue with people. It's weird. But anyway, back to Jesse's story. Next day at Mass, the entire town of Anvil is there because, they all heard about Reverend Custer's freak out the night before, his drunken rampage, him getting the shit kicked out of him, and so everybody's there. Everyone, for once, as Jesse puts it, actually shows up at church the next day. And as he is delivering his sermon, a giant ball of light bursts into the church, consumes Jesse, kills everyone in the church, blows it up, and that is where the scene ends. It is kind of great. There's no dialogue from a certain point in that scene, and I really love the portrayal of this. You obviously knew what this was already, having watched a little bit of the show, but I'm curious what your thoughts on this were.
I think Steve Dillon really gets to show for the first time here how much of a master he is at visual storytelling, at communicating exactly what's happening, and communicating what Genesis is, which Ennis will outright say it later in this very issue, that it's the progeny of an angel and a demon. So, which. Yeah. Okay.
We'll talk more about it as they reveal more about it. But
it's a thing.
Tulip and Cassidy, having been nearby Anvil at the time of the Genesis explosion of the Church of Anvil,
part of the problem of watching the show is I knew going in Cassidy's a vampire.
Yeah. Okay. Thankfully, it is the end of issue 2 reveal. So you don't have to wait long. But here Cassidy is hiding. Here he is hiding in the back of his own truck as Tulip drives it with a blanket thrown over top of him. Ennis is laying all the hints there right from the start.
Ennis doesn't go so far as, ooh, he doesn't cast a reflection. Ooh, he wouldn't like holy water. Ooh, he doesn't like the cross.
Yeah,
but there are hints.
There are hints. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, Cassidy, or not Cassidy, Tulip goes to investigate the destroyed church and finds Jesse. We learn that Jesse and Tulip have some kind of past together, and so seeing Jesse here after all this time is a big deal for her. As we go back to sort of the present here, then Jesse, in leaving the diner, has a cowboy join him, walk alongside him, and say, "Well, Pilgrim, couldn't help but notice you ain't mentioned me yet." So, Jacob, I need to know how long it took you to figure out who this character was.
Okay, so before I say, in my defense, I don't watch a lot of Westerns.
That's fair. Neither do I.
I have seen John Wayne in, like, maybe 3 things. Liberty Valance, Stagecoach. Liberty Valance, Stagecoach. Maybe 2 things. Hang on, I'm going to check my letterbox real quick.
You do that. I'm just going to say, this character is John Wayne. John Wayne is a character in Preacher.
But not really John Wayne. It's, at least I don't think it is.
We'll talk more about it later. It's in my opinion, this is, I think, one of those fascinating.
It's a weird case of mental health that Ennis treats surprisingly well. Like,
yeah, it is so weird that this is actually one of the only aspects of the main cast of the comic that never got adapted in the show. They mentioned John Wayne like exactly once in the show. It's very weird. I think John Wayne being here as a character is I think a really important part of Jesse's journey. And we'll talk more about that towards the end of this volume, but we're laying the groundwork here.
3 things. I have seen John Wayne in 3 things, and one of them isn't even a Western.
But speaking of introducing things, we meet another semi-important character to Preacher. We meet Mr. Sheriff Hugo Root, who
is a racist.
Drops
the N-word a bunch, hard.
A lot. Yeah.
Preface it with Martian.
Because
must be aliens that blew up the church.
Yeah, because in addition to being a racist, he's also just a conspiracy theorist, which I guess also all racists are in a way. They're kind of all conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
So you have Sheriff Root here investigating the destruction of the Church of Anvil as we catch up with Jesse again in the past, as he wakes up from having been let's call it joined with Genesis.
It is dusk. It is so
Cassie's out.
Can we call this a 3-way meet cute? I want to call this a 3-way meet cute.
Sort of. Like, I would say so. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Okay. Yes. We've already established Jesse and Tulip have had a relationship at this point, but like, it's a 3-way meet cute.
It totally is. This is also where we get our first hints about what Genesis actually is, what Jesse is feeling inside of him. It tells the story he hears in his head about I'll quote it here, about a guy and a girl who fell in love and set the world on fire, and the kid they had, and something massive behind it all, something no one's ever supposed to know. But whatever it tells me, whatever it says, it sounds like the word of God. And so we have the name for what Jesse's power will be referred to throughout the rest of the comic. It is the Word.
The Word of God, because
I also just adore the page that Steve Dillon draws there when Jesse is telling that story of the angel and the demon fucking. It looks great. It's so fucking cool looking. It's great.
Tasteful nudity.
It is. Yeah. But we have our characters being confronted by the local police and Sheriff Root here, who Jesse uses the word on for the first time and says, "Drop your guns, let us go," and they do. It's Jesse using his power for the first time. There's something really cool to the lettering there. The lettering all becomes red, and Jesse's eyes turn red. And so Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy drive away, and the police are met by the Saint of Killers, who it is implied he's about to murder them all, as the first issue ends there. It's a long first issue. It's like double length.
It's double length. When did? Okay, yeah. Okay, interesting. I'm wondering. Well, I'm wondering if Ennis was at all inspired by the opening line of The Gunslinger.
Which is?
Oh god, hang on. I want to quote it right because it's a very iconic thing. The men in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed.
Okay. Oh, maybe. Yeah, that's possible.
Maybe like it's kind of there. It's also the terrible thing of I know that because Stephen King took several decades to write The Dark Tower, he then got partially inspired by Preacher in the end.
Oh, really?
So,
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh, what? That's crazy.
Yeah, no. At least
I didn't know that.
It's King started writing The Dark Tower it started publishing in 1982 and didn't complete until like the 2000 early 2000s. I want to say 2007, but I don't think that's right. I think it might be earlier than that.
So he was inspired by Preacher in what way? What inspired him?
Dylan's art.
Oh, really?
Some of Dylan's art.
There's also the religious imagery or the Western stuff or what's up?
Probably the Western stuff. I don't know specifically.
That's really, really interesting. Huh. Okay, yeah. That's really cool, actually.
Oh yeah, so he finished The Dark Tower in 2004. So
that's after all Preacher had finished releasing. So, cool. I also just like the idea that Stephen King reads Preacher. That's really funny. Also, if you were an active comic reader at the time that Preacher was coming out, odds are you would at least checked out Preacher somehow because it was just that fucking massive. It was a huge deal for obvious reasons. Anyway, opening Preacher issue 2. Sheriff Root is reporting the aftermath of the Saint of Killers massacre. Once again, we get some fantastic Steve Dillon art with the title page and Hell followed with him. Wonderful stuff. It looks great. We get, I think, probably the first case of Steve Dillon drawing just outright physical violence. It's really gory. It's really cool looking. I don't know. How do you take to the gore?
Oddly enough, I think it's a mix of Dillon's art makes it work, but also Matt Hollingsworth's colors make it work.
That's true. The colors do make it feel more stylized than Steve Dillon is drawing.
Well, yeah, I think they start like it's explicit, and this is sort of a thing throughout the entire book. And I know eventually the colorist switches. Hollingsworth leaves the book about halfway through the whole run, I think.
Yeah.
And I hope it maintains the same coloring style because it makes at least the gore a little easier to swallow.
The gore does not get easier, I'll say.
Interesting, because does it get harder? Like,
it gets harder, but also there comes a point in the book when they start doing specials and miniseries for Preacher, and while Steve Dillon draws all of the main issues of the comic, any sort of specials or miniseries are not drawn by Steve Dillon, so they sort of have their own unique feel to them.
I feel like that could be a double-edged sword, because
there are some art styles that I'm not a huge fan of in some of the later issues.
Because this art team of mainly Dillon and Hollingsworth are very they kind of they in a way dull some of the edges. Like,
interesting.
Like,
I still found it very explicit on a reread, personally.
Yeah, I don't want to say they don't make it explicit because they do, but they don't make it feel as if there's glee being taken in pushing the envelope, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
It's interesting because I read Garth Ennis's introduction and there was something that stuck out to me something along the lines of, I don't know how they did it. I only had to write the thing for maybe a day or two a month. They had to sit with it for the rest of the month and draw the damn thing.
Yeah. Which is a fair point to make. I mean, like, we often praise writers of comics and things like that, but like our artists in so many ways are the real heroes of the industry. I
mean, I try to praise the artists.
Of course, but I'm saying, like, in general conversations about comics, credit where credit is due. Garth Ennis rightfully calls that out, I think, in the introduction. An introduction that is mostly a piss take. It's worth adding. But Saint of Killers, after murdering all these police, and Root sort of escaping, begins to hunt down Jesse. But also, we're back in the present, and we're following Hugo Root giving his report. And after Root leaves, we're left with these two other officers. I forget their names at the moment. But the point is, they begin talking about Root after he leaves, about what happened to his son. So you knew this character already because you had watched the first few episodes of the show. Slightly different backstory, let's say, in the comics, because Garth Ennis uses the suicide of Kurt Cobain to inspire the backstory of a deformed character, let's say.
Let's be honest, this backstory is fucking ableist. Can we just say?
I mean, I mean, I'm not sure if I agree with that.
I don't love the framing of someone deciding, I'm gonna shoot myself because I want to be like a hero who committed suicide. I'm just like, that's...
I mean, aren't there actual cases of that happening, though? Like that's an actual thing that's happened?
I suppose it's...
Like, I mean, and this is literally just, I think, commenting on shit that was actually happening at the time. Because, yeah, essentially the backstory is Hugo's son, Eugene, idolized Kurt Cobain. And after Kurt Cobain killed himself, he thought, I'm going to be like my hero, and I'm going to do the same thing to myself. And
it doesn't help that, like, Root is an abusive father. Like, that is very much the subtext, even before all of this, and it never quite gets framed that way, and I'm curious to see where
we're going to talk more about Eugene in later volumes, but for now he's only here for this first arc. But Eugene is a character famously known in the comics, although he won't get this name for a little bit yet. Do you know his name? I'm not sure if you do.
Arseface.
They do. Okay, they do call. Okay, sorry, they do say that
because Ennis wants to make fun of the Batman origin in a way.
I
it's
suppose
what he's doing.
Okay,
it's what he's doing.
But yeah, so Eugene did not succeed in killing himself, and a shotgun to the face did what you see. It's an impossible to describe look for a character. If only to say what a later speech bubble in this comic will say, he's got a face like an arse.
We should context. That name comes from Cassidy.
Yes, yeah. That's exactly it. Eugene needs little translation bubbles because he can't talk properly.
I kind of wish they might have just regularly lettered it and maybe done a note instead of continually doing. I don't know. It feels. I'm not sure. There's something about this character that I just something feels off in the way Ennis is doing it. And I think Ennis may have. Because they changed it for the show. I'm thinking maybe Ennis, on reflection, wouldn't have done it the same way.
Well, if only in that, like, it's not really a timely reference anymore. A kid that tried to kill himself because of Kurt Cobain isn't really possible in 2016 when they made the show. But also, in general, they made Arseface a much more sympathetic character in the show. And yeah, it's for the best. But also, there's just something that's fun about this. Like, I don't know, Ennis is just making a ridiculous character, and it I don't know. There's something about it that just works for me. Maybe it's just my familiarity with the comic that makes me I don't know. It's good.
It also might be because you're not disabled and I am. Like, maybe there's something that I'm seeing. I'm not saying that I am, but like maybe that's where my uncomfortableness sees, because it's like
it's a significantly different disability, though.
Yeah, significantly different.
It's a very different disability, and also, like, you're well aware, I have disabled siblings.
Yes.
Yeah. One of which also enjoys this character. So
Of course he does.
Of course he does. Come on. I don't know. Anyway, back to Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy, who we are still importantly in our sort of flashback from the diner. But we have Jesse and Tulip going out to buy new clothes, and Jesse talking to John Wayne again, getting a bit more, essentially up until the actual reveal comes with John Wayne. Like, Ennis is continually laying hints down that as to who this character could be, and if you don't have it figured out by the time it happens, that's kind of on you.
I mean, it was on me because, like I said, I have seen John Wayne in 3 things, one of which not a Western.
Yeah. But anyway, we have Tulip buying Jesse new clothes. We go back to Heaven.
Cassidy is constantly the best thing about.
He's so much fun.
This,
which does make it bizarre because, spoilers, he's the only character of these 3 that does not show up in the last arc at all, and the last arc is easily the best of the volume. So
yeah, but I think the last arc, when the last arc actually happens, I think Ennis is. What helps is that Ennis is, I think, finally locked in the details about Jesse's past and a little more about who Jesse is.
Yeah, he has settled into the book at this point, and I think this is a conversation I'd like to, I guess, further take into the second arc of the book, but I'll bring it up now. I think a lot of these early issues are Ennis kind of settling into the book. Despite being bold and brash and coming out swinging in the way that he does with the book, it is still very much finding its feet, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's very much, if you compare the first and the last arc, the first arc is very much like Ennis is angry at religion, doesn't want to go into why, but the last arc is a very pointed commentary at the controlling nature of specifically American Southern evangelical Christianity. Like, it's very pointed, and that's where it works best. Whereas this, it's vague anger at religion, and it doesn't not work because the first arc works. It just isn't quite as refined.
Yeah. But anyway, we go to Heaven at one point to report back that Pilo is dead, and our other 2 angels, Fiora and DeBlanc, who were in the show actually, are sort of reflecting on this, and also at one point, one of our angels says that sooner or later the Grail is going to have to hear about this, which seems to cause some bad feelings amongst our angels. We don't really develop on this in this volume. This is coming up in later issues, I'll say. But
I had a feeling that's going to be like a thing.
And this is like
mainly because Grail, Holy Grail. As an idea.
The Grail. I can't say too much because it's all spoilery shit. Just be wary of the Grail, I guess, is all we'll say. But we go back to our main 3, and we have them kind of picking a fight with people at this bar, and through this fight, Cassidy gets a knife in the eye, and again, Cassidy just being the best character here, just goes, "All right, hold on a minute, mate. I'll be right with you." And he just starts taking a chomp out of this guy's neck. He starts biting and starts eating this guy, sucking out his blood. That is the end of the issue.
It's largely because, let's be honest, Ennis has caught up to the present at this point. Like, we have caught up to the present in the flashbacks, and it's like, well, shit, I haven't really explained what Cassidy's deal is.
Here we go. Which leads to easily my favorite cover of this collection. I fucking love the issue 3 cover so
I was going to say, if it weren't for all the blood, I'd say make it the thumbnail of the episode. But
Jacob, I still might.
Either do this one or the issue 1 cover, because
That's fair. But I feel like that's overused to promote Preacher, and I want to be unique, Jacob.
You want to be unique, vampires.
I do like vampires. I love Cassidy. I love him so much. I don't know. Maybe there's some better later issues. I don't know. Well, I'll decide on the thumbnail as we continue to read. Anyway, issue 3. Back in heaven. Fjord and DeBlanc are fucked. That's all kind of we're deciding. We're settling on here.
Let's be honest. Part of the problem is Ennis has exactly one thing for these characters to do in issue 4.
Yeah.
And that is literally it. I don't think he has. I do not think he has worked out. I don't think he's worked out exactly what the Grail is.
Yeah, he has a rough idea, I would say, based on certain things that are.
I don't think he's worked out the specifics.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely.
Like
not.
I think he's like, I have an idea. I want to seed it, but I don't know when I'm gonna pull that trigger.
Yeah,
and I also want to be like, yeah. So the idea of heaven is kind of fucked in general. It's like, yes.
Yeah. I will also say, like, Fjord and DeBlanc are like some of the only characters that I think the show actually improved from the comic. I think yeah, they're in the first couple episodes. They're the ones that Cassidy keeps killing in episode 2, and they keep coming back. It's fun. I think it's episode 2. It's one of the early ones. Anyway, back to Cassidy though, who is still eating this guy and getting himself a little snack. Jesse and Tulip are rightfully taken aback by this. And Cassidy, after seeing them sort of repulsed by this, keeps purposefully eating the guy. So Jesse uses the word to tell him to quit, and which pisses Cassidy off, and causes Cassidy to leave. He gets pissed off at Jesse for using the word on him. Cassidy leaves. Tulip and Jesse.
Yeah, it's interesting that Jesse calls Cassidy an abomination, because it's like, okay, dude, You're a hypocrite, buddy.
I mean, let's consider, now that you've read the whole first volume, like, consider Jesse's whole backstory. Like, there's still some part of his brain that is literally indoctrinated. That is with the
very you very, very damaged man.
Yeah. My poor.
But also, Cassidy's too busy being like an intentionally dramatic bitch. Like,
yeah, oh yeah, he's amazing. But yeah, then we catch up with two officers who come across the Saint of Killers, who's still looking for Genesis. Saint of Killers kills these two guys, and we have some police investigations. We have Sheriff Root getting involved. That's about it.
Yeah, we get the one scene. We get the one scene where it really implies that Root is an abusive piece of shit.
Oh yeah, and also like. There's something, because here's the thing. The previous conversation about our space aside, I think there's something to be said about the character that, like, he does need to be cared for. That because he's so damaged both physically and mentally, like he needs care. He needs to be looked after. And Root sees the deformity of his son as something that, like, he cannot handle as a person, as a man, if you will, and just ignores his son at every possibility. He's sitting next to him, and like Arspace is trying to have a conversation the whole time, and it is just these continuous panels of Steve Dillon drawing Root, ignoring him, and it is depressing to look at.
Honestly, this first arc is much more effective, Gareth Ennis saying a cab, than the middle arc is.
I guess that's fair, but there's only really like one actual cop character that he focuses in on here in the first arc.
Yeah, but the rest of the nameless cops are also all pretty shitty. Like,
yeah, that's fair.
They're pretty shit.
But also, Root gets called out to help with the investigation, and Arspace hides in his car as he leaves the house, and that's going to be important. We have Jesse and Tulip sort of having their first moment alone together since they've been reunited, and
Jesse is interesting because he's almost immediately regretting the shit that he said to Cassidy. Like,
yeah, and again, like, you know, knowing what we do later on in this volume, like it is Jesse kind of acknowledging that, like, it's something that he literally couldn't help him in himself. Like, it's something that just kind of came out. It's a great moment for him and Tulip.
Also, it's so clear that these two want to jump each other's bones. Like,
oh, they're lovely, aren't they? I have to know. Were you at least rooting for these guys, these crazy kids?
My brain was like, okay, Ennis, how many pages is it going to take to them to fuck? Like,
they do not this entire volume.
Yeah,
In
They don't in the
flashbacks,
present. In the
flashbacks,
present. In the
they do.
present. In the flashbacks, they
in flashbacks,
fucking do.
Yeah, but like as long as Ennis is dealing with this tension between them throughout this first volume, like no, they don't really act on their feelings until literally the final page of the volume. So it's really cool. It's Ennis is taking time with these characters and knows that he wants to tell a larger story with them at least. We have Cassidy finding the dead bodies of these police officers and all these people inside the store that him and Tulip were shopping at. Cassidy comes face to face with the Saint of Killers, and he gets shot.
Yeah,
and obviously the Saint of Killers thinks he's dead. But we have we cut back.
He also for the alcohol he buys, he puts down a coin from the 1870s.
Mm-hmm.
So is meant to be a hint about his backstory.
It is. It very much is. Yeah. Oh God. Oh man. If we weren't so far away from it, I would be. Sorry. We are so far away from it, so I'm mad that we can't talk more about it. But I love the Saint of Killers backstory. Back to Tulip and Jesse though, who Jesse is finding out more about Genesis through Genesis itself within him. We get the proper backstory of how Genesis came to be, about how literally it is the spawn of an angel and a demon and their forbidden love, if you will, which will also have some sort of parallels to Jesse's backstory later on, and also sort of imply that it's the reason why Genesis chose him, but we'll talk more about that later. We have Jesse and Tulip leaving their motel room and coming face to face with Sheriff Root, who has them dead to rights, tells him not to use his word, otherwise he's just going to shoot right away. And we end the issue back in heaven as our angels find out that Jesse Custer knows about the Saint of Killers and that they're in the shit, as it is said. We go into Preacher number 4. Interesting cover. It's a very different Glenn Fabry cover, I would say. It's cool. It's nice. So, time to start getting some Jesse backstory.
Just hints.
A little bit. Enough to know that there was a time in his life when Jesse Custer was happy. And
that he idolized John Wayne.
Hell of a guy to idolize, but I guess if you're a kid, you don't know.
I mean, okay, so you do have to separate. It's I think it's clear in Ennis's the way Ennis characterizes the character of John Wayne that this is not literally John Wayne.
Yeah, like, Jesse as a kid knew who John Wayne was. Idolized the character.
This is the stock character that John Wayne would play. Specifically, the stock Western character that John Wayne would play.
And there's just this really sweet scene. I think it's genuinely a sweet scene where Jesse is sitting in front of the TV, and the idea is that John Wayne, in Jesse's mind, turned around and faced the TV screen and said, "Howdy, Pilgrim. You're probably wondering why I'm talking to you. Reason as, you and me are going to be partners. Anytime you need me, I'll be here, son. Because a man can use some advice in a world as rough as this one. Now let's shake on it, partner." And his hand literally comes out of the screen. And it's
and I don't want to talk about the actual like what this actually is because it's again it's a genuinely nuanced take on having on someone who's gone through traumas, dissociations, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
Again, so weird coming from Garth Ennis.
Yeah, Jacob. Jacob, I know it's hard to believe, but Garth Ennis is a really fucking popular writer for a reason.
Again, it's the weird thing of the two. Because let's be honest, we've covered. I don't know where this is going. We've covered two very controversial writers. Mm-hmm. With Ennis and then Frank Miller. Mm-hmm. And they're both popular for a reason. Yet, Ennis has always been edgy, whereas Miller fell and started to fall into the traps of being radicalized in a wrong way, and it got weird. Frank
Miller at least pretended to be dignified at one point.
Yeah, and then he stopped pretending, and his work got worse for it. A lot worse for it.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Dark Knight Strikes Again.
Oh, God. Anyway, moving on. Back to the present. We have Jesse and Tulip versus Sheriff Root, and Cassidy on the way to help his friends, who he has now claimed as his friends. And there's this great scene where he's talking to himself as he's driving back there.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I was also kind of flipping back between obviously the voice from the show, but also Anthony Stewart Head as Giles, specifically for this scene, because it's very similar to this one scene in Buffy where Giles is madly driving a car and has this insane monologue of, why the fuck am I doing this? I have to save everybody's asses. Gotcha. It's great. Huh.
All right then. I love him. Great character. Again, hot take. One of those popular characters from the comic is a great character.
Might end up being a moral center of the story somehow, despite being a vampire. I don't know.
That's an interesting thing to say, Jacob.
There are things that are going to make me regret those words.
Oh man, especially Comic Cassidy. I cannot wait to see your reaction to certain things later on. Oh my god, I love that you said that.
I don't know. I feel like Ennis is trying to set up a Trinity type thing here.
Oh yeah,
not a DC Trinity, a religious Trinity. I
did want to bring this up actually. Remember last time I was trying to make that comparison in Hellblazer to a triumvirate with those characters that we had there. This is what I was actually thinking of. Our ethos, pathos, and logos. We have Jesse, our leader character, Tulip, our more logical one, and Cassidy, our emotional side of him. Which I think is it really works. It's a great trio of characters. They work for a reason. I think that's why. So anyway, it's also Kirk, Spock, and McCoy from Star Trek, but that's beside the point.
It's almost like that's how you do a trio dynamic. Like
yeah, crazy.
It's almost like writing has conventions that even if you try to avoid them, you kind of just have to do them because that's how storytelling works. Or how storytelling can work. I don't want to.
There are other ways for stories to work.
Yes, but
anyway, Jesse, Tulip, and Root are face to face with them with the Saint of Killers. He catches up with them. I love this fucking scene then when Cassidy catches up with them as well, and he tries to drive a truck into the Saint of Killers, and he's tossed out the fucking window. And as Jesse goes to like check up on Cassidy says, "Cheer up, preacher man, you're rescued." It's great. I love them. They're so good. And
I mean, honestly, this issue is like the best type of chaos. Like,
issue 4 is so good.
Here's the thing. This was where I was literally getting into the groove, and then that second arc happened.
Jacob, shut up! Don't worry about the second arc. We're in the now. The Saint of Killers about to kill Sheriff Root. We have Arseface jumping out of his dad's car, and he says, and I quote, "Da kama da," which is translated to "Don't kill my dad." It is a very dramatic panel, and I love it. We get this amazing Steve Dillon drawn like faces and guns on holsters, classic.
I'm imagining it just that like if this were a film, quick cut, flash everybody. Like that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And then just in the middle of it all, Cassidy goes, "That fella's got a face like an arse."
And here's the thing, the way I read that line is Cassidy is drunk as fuck and not all there because he was flown through a window.
Yes, it's amazing. Oh my god. Jesse yells enough with the word, causing everyone to stop in their tracks. Interesting. Also, oh man, sometimes Preacher TV show brain takes over, and I'm like, why does the word work on the Saint of Killers? And it works on him in the comics. It doesn't in the show for some reason. It's a weird change they made. It's a weird adaptation. I'm going to keep saying.
Maybe I wonder if that's because he's supposed to be a literal saint, and he's like, so he's already dead. Like,
yeah. I mean,
maybe I don't know.
I mean, the character is already dead, considering we found him in a coffin.
Yes, but it's implied that he's resurrected. I don't. Ennis's theology doesn't quite work.
Ennis.
I don't think
there's a certain internal logic to it.
There's an internal logic. It's the thing of Ennis's commentary on religion, in a lot of ways, is pulling on popular religion, if that makes sense. Like
that's fair, but also in using the hierarchy of angels that he does here, I'm not sure. I don't think there's anything popular about that, is there? Like I certainly never seen that portrayal in any other media. I'm
trying to think if I have. I might have. possibly. I don't know. It still seems well. This is after Preacher, but Supernatural does it. I think.
Oh, really? I never watched Supernatural.
Of course it does. Supernatural does a lot of weird shit.
Supernatural just sounds bad.
About the bits, the first 5 seasons are fun bad, and then seasonal rot sets in, and
I also really shouldn't judge other people's taste in CW shows.
I've watched the entire Arrowverse.
Okay, but also I'm doing it because it's funny to sit through nowadays. I've watched all of Arrow, I've watched all of Flash, and all of Supergirl. I have not watched all of the others, but that's
you probably should watch Superman and Lois. People say Superman and Lois is actually good.
I should, but I think my next one. I think when I get back to it, I want to do Legends of Tomorrow, which I've seen the first 2.5 seasons of, and is good. It's a good show. And also, I can't believe. Here's the thing: I dropped off the Arrowverse at the time right before they introduced Constantine into Legends of Tomorrow, and I kick myself in the ass every single day over that.
I mean that's fair. Yeah. So Jesse calls down an angel, and we get further confirmation that Heaven's a bunch of hypocrites.
Mm-hmm. He comes down in this heavenly host body, kind of giant white figure in the sky, and Jesse says, "Cut the shit with the word," and he's like, "Right, all right." So we have our little pathetic looking angel here, who Jesse compels to tell the truth. The big truth here, and the big mission statement of the book, is that God is gone. He quit. He left heaven. We don't know where he is. Also, a thing the show doesn't reveal until the end of season 1. It's really weird. Weird adaptation. But God quit. And so we have Jesse's sort of mission statement here. He wants to go find God. And along the way, we'll do 66 issues of absolute hell. Because Garth Ennis is insane. But also we get some ruminations here on what has happened to heaven with God's disappearance. It was heaven was left in the charge of the Seraphi, I think.
Seraph. So, all right, it should be like. God, I'm trying to remember which one's singular and which one's plural. Seraph is singular, seraphim is plural, so it should just be seraph. Seraphi, okay. Maybe
because the other ones are the Delphi.
They're Adelphi.
Yeah. It's weird. Anyway, so Jesse, what is the scene? Hang on.
It's the everything's settled. Angels leave. The Santa Killers is like, well, I'll be seeing you. Root tries to leave. Jesse offhandedly with the word says, "You're gonna go fuck yourself."
God, Jacob.
Do I have to explain it? And he does.
I can if you want. I mean, here's the thing: the book realizes that it can't really properly depict that in an issue of a comic, like physically. I don't think there's a way you can draw that. But the implication is that Hugo Root does exactly that. He fucks himself, and is rushed to an ambulance. His son is there as his dad is finally talking to him. Arseface will do whatever his dad asks him to. His dad asks him to hand him a gun, with which Hugo Root kills himself. And that is the only reason he was talking to his son finally. Arseface runs out of the ambulance screaming. It's really fucked up. And then we see heaven, where Fiora and DeBlanc are sent away. They're banished by the Seraph.
I imagine thrown into hell, but it's not explicit.
And we then go over to some teases for the rest of the book. Actually, it's a page with the word on the top, hints. We have Arseface I have to read this line out, not the translated line, I should say. I will have vengeance on Jesse Custer, vengeance for the blood of my father, and if I have a face like an arse, so be it. I will become Arseface.
It's because Garth Ennis thinks Batman is dumb.
We then see San Francisco. It gets a tease for something that actually doesn't get touched on in this volume. We'll talk more about that later. I'll say I can say this now because it'll be a while until we get back to this book. This is sort of referencing the Grail that we were teasing earlier.
Same with, I'm guessing, the bottom tease as well.
Let's see. Yeah. They're both Grail teases. Yep.
Whereas then the middle tease is a tease for the final arc.
Something about Grandma and her listening in on Jesse. But we then have our final 2 pages where our 3 heroes walk off into the sunset together, and Jesse imagining John Wayne behind him, turning back and smiling at him. As we get our title page, standing tall, closing out our first arc. And I remember you finished reading this first arc, and I was very surprised to learn that you really liked it.
Yeah, no, like it's I think the Edge is going to be something that's just going to be not for me.
That's fine.
Some of it works really well. Like, again, oddly enough, a lot of the stuff with Cassidy works really well.
Yeah.
And I can't quite pinpoint why that doesn't bug me as much as some of the other stuff.
Because he's a mad Irish bastard.
Maybe
he's just funny. He's just a funny character. Overall, the book is laced with this comedic edge that I think makes it is the thing that makes it readable. Like I think if this were played straight, it would be far less enjoyable. However, I think we'll talk about this when we get to the last arc. There is this shift in the last arc and it starts taking a lot more seriously. But it is a very special case for that last arc. But we'll talk about that later. For now, we have Preacher number 5 and the start of our second story arc, which is A Thing.
So it just feels. Can we just say it takes place in New York?
Mm-hmm. Garth Ennis loves New York. You could tell. You could tell he just loves New York. He loves it for what it is. He's worked here before. He appreciates it as someone that didn't grow up in America, but also has things to say about it. As you know, it's mostly about the police. So let's meet our main character here, or our main side character here for the arc with John Toole. Very subtle, quite obviously.
Yeah.
He's a bad cop, is the idea. Not a bad cop as in a corrupt cop. This is just a useless cop in a way. Is what Ennis is trying to portray here.
And his partner is macho, sexy super cop, peak of male heterosexuality.
Paul Bridges.
I will say, I like a lot of the fuck the police stuff. Like
it's good. It's good.
I mean, part of the problem, just not even in like terms of what the story's doing. It's just sort of that this entire 3 issues feels like a zigzag away from.
It's so different. It's so different, not just from the 2 other arcs in this volume, but from like the rest of the fucking comic. It's so bizarre. But also on the a cab shit. I mean, this whole opening scene is police brutality. Like Paul Bridges enters the scene and starts beating the piss out of these guys that really aren't doing that much. Like, it's meant to show police are bad people. But then we switch over to our other big character we're going to follow throughout this, a mystery character.
We're going to say, we can just call him the Rear Cleaver because that's sort of he's a serial killer that the cops are on the trail of.
He has cut a guy's face off. Probably the most graphic scene in the comic up to this point. It's shown in explicit detail, a guy with his face cut off.
Yet, oddly enough, I found the Joker's face in Death of the Family creepier in a way.
I mean, that's fair. It's also the Joker, so
it's also the Joker, and
so there's that.
Greg Capullo art.
Yeah. Oh God. Have you seen? I don't know if you have. Totally off topic. I guess kind of on topic. The cover that opens for Death of the Family that shows the actual like full interior of Joker's cut off face.
No, I haven't.
That is a thing that exists. It's a flip cover. It's they released the cover that's like it's Joker's face, and you could flip off the face that comes off of the side there, and it was just his fully cut off face underneath it. It's really fucked up looking. Cannot believe they let them publish that, but I guess if they let them publish Preacher, DC can do anything.
So yeah.
Anyway, he nails a face to a wall, and that's all we get for now.
And our main trio is searching for God in New York, because Cassidy might know a guy who's a writer and a weirdo and is into ghosts and flying saucers. And I think part of the problem is that in these 3 issues, Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy don't do much until like the back half of the story.
Yeah, because in a weird way, Ennis is trying to set up a murder mystery here because we have our mystery killer, and there's only really one suspect, 2 if you count the very obvious red herring. But the very obvious red herring doesn't work because it's a very obvious red herring, and it's just kind of a shit mystery.
Like, it's the terrible thing of, oh no, I clocked by the end of this issue, I clocked exactly what the twist was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I suppose if nothing else, the mystery is mercifully short. It's all revealed by the end of the 2nd issue of the arc. So you don't have to sit through it for too long, I suppose.
Yeah.
But we meet Cassidy's friend. This is Sai, who's a weird guy who might know some shit about looking for God, and
they have bro talk.
Obviously, he doesn't. Yeah, they talk like 2 white guys that have just seen each other for the first time in a long time, which is exactly what the scene is. But yeah, we meet Sai. Sai is gonna show us around New York. He's gonna give us a place to stay. Sai is a journalist who is looking into this killer, this mystery killer. He's reporting on him as well, following the police investigation.
He drops hints that Bridges is definitely the killer. Spoiler alert, Bridges is our red herring.
Yes, obviously. It's just
like I wonder who the other suspect is.
Again, mercifully short, if nothing else. So we have Sai showing them around New York. Jesse and Tulip go back to Sai's place. Cassidy goes out with Sai himself. Or sorry, no. Tulip goes back to Sai's place. Cassidy and Jesse go out together.
Because Jesse, you know what? I do like little character bits of Jesse wanting to do New York tourist shit. Like,
yeah, because he's a fucking tourist. Which, again, if any character in this book is Garth Ennis, it's Cassidy. Because again, Garth Ennis loves New York, so does Cassidy, and it's that tourist shit. It's fun. We get another scene of Paul Bridges being a shit guy. He's beating up suspects in the middle of the precinct, and Tool is useless off to the side. And these police headquarters scenes do nothing for the story.
We should say. I think all the suspects we see beat up are not white people. Like,
yeah, which again, Garth Ennis is saying something.
Ennis is clearly aware of who in police brutality gets the worst of it.
Yeah, which again
the system is meant to fuck over.
It's something really cool to be saying in the mid '90s, also. But again, it's not. Ennis is being subtle with it, but I suppose the problem at that point is that he is being subtle with it, and everything else in the story is so painfully obvious. But as you said, the scenes between Jesse and Cassidy and the follow are really, really nice.
We get some interesting ideas about Jesse. That Jesse wants to be a good person, like doesn't want to fuck people over with the absolute power that he has.
Yeah, he doesn't want to use the word to just get whatever he wants. I like this line here, where Jesse says, "I'm looking for the Lord because I figure he's deserted his creation. I aim to bring him to book for that little transgression, to confront him and hear his answer to that charge. He has an obligation to do right by the world he's made for. Oh God, okay." Also worth noting, we haven't mentioned this yet. Every single line in this book is spelled out phonetically. Every character has an accent, and if they have an accent, they're going to speak. The dialogue is going to be written with
phonetically transcribed. With that accent.
Yeah. So the line here is, he has an obligation to do right by the world he's made and the folks he's peopled it with. He quits and runs. He ain't facing up to his responsibilities. Great sentiment. And also sometimes reading Cassidy dialogue is impossible.
Also because Ennis being Irish puts in all the British and Irish slang.
Oh yeah, totally. He's just it's great. I love the scene then when Cassidy pretends he's gonna throw himself off the Empire State Building. He jumps
and sticks to the wall because vampire.
Yeah, crazy vampire shit. We then get a little tease at the end with Detective Paul Bridges, who is contacted by the killer, meaning that Paul isn't the killer, so there's really only one other suspect. And
he's not contacted by the. I don't think he's. Is he contacted? Is it the killer? No, he's contacted first by Toole, who lost his keys because Toole's a tool. It's supposed to be the guy he's fucking later on.
Oh, that's right. You're right.
It's the what if our super straight macho man was gay?
Dun dun dun.
Which, especially coming off the way Jamie Delano writes queer characters in the last volume of Hellblazer that we read, and the first 2 volumes of Hellblazer that we read, you can tell Ennis is both straight and I don't think has a lot of queer friends.
Interesting point, because I'll say this: Hellblazer, which he wrote before this, does have some really interesting gay rights as well.
That's interesting.
So, which is probably, and I think also because this we're gonna bring this up later, but this is the point that we disagreed on, but agreed that both can be true. Is that what Ennis is doing here? We have to spoil this all, obviously.
Yes. Well, here's the thing: the gay twist doesn't happen until issue fucking 7.
Yes.
It's right at the end.
So Paul Bridges is gay, and what Ennis is saying is all cops are bad, and portraying part of that is showing Paul Bridges as a hypocrite because his whole thing
he wants to do the hypocrisy of the conservative gay Republican, the conservative closeted gay Republican, basically.
Because Paul Bridges as a character hates gay people, and in the end, the big twist is that he is gay himself. So the cop is a hypocrite. That is what Ennis is saying. But also, you're right. There's some genuinely problematic portrayal of gay people there. And I think
partially because, let's be honest, I'm also reading this as this is the only Ennis that I have read.
That's what I was just going to say. Like,
Paul Bridges is the only explicitly queer character that Ennis has written in this book.
I would argue that Cassidy is definitely queer coded, but otherwise. I mean,
no, that's why I said explicit, because Cassidy.
Yeah.
It's look. Just talking in terms of literary criticism, it's nearly impossible to write a heterosexual vampire. Like,
true.
Yes,
you're right.
They're all at the very least a little coded.
But yeah, so I'm coming at this from the perspective of someone that's read a lot of other Ennis that came before Preacher, no less, where he has written gay characters much better than Paul Bridges. So. Maybe that's where I'm more seeing the best in the intentions of the writing here.
Yeah, it's where I'm like, because I know he wrote Hellblazer, and John Constantine as a character is defined by being a bisexual disaster.
Yeah, and like from his inception, that's not something recent, like that he's always been that way.
It's almost like people have put queer characters in things since the dawn of time, and trying to take them.
Jacob.
Stories aren't political.
Okay, Preacher number 6. First off, Cassidy's wearing a Batman shirt on the cover, and I just
it's hard to. I think almost all these covers are brilliant, and I love almost all of them.
Glenn Fabry, a hot take. Glenn Fabry, good artist.
Glenn Fabry. I'm like, it's where it's the oh god, what do we choose for the thumbnail? Because we can only choose one. Honestly, it's like
That,
I mean,
that
there's some that I think like are easy throwouts because they might be too explicit, but that's that's another point.
Also, did you get a chance to look through the variant covers of the back of the book?
I didn't.
Oh, Jacob! Look through them right now. They have the artist lists listed at the front of the cover gallery, and there's some really great names in there. There's a Bruce.
I was gonna say because you told me there's a Bruce Timm and there's like
Bruce
a Jim
Timm,
Lee one.
There's Brian Boland. There's
a Quesada one.
There's Dave Gibbons. There's Doug Mank. There's Jim Lee. There's some
Christ,
really.
This is like a list of any artist who's anybody.
That is just how big Preacher was. It was a massive fucking book. It's really, really cool.
Ooh, I like this Fabry one. I like this.
Yeah, the Fabry one's. Yeah, the Jim Lee one. Jim Lee's for some reason chooses to draw Grandma Jody and TC, which I think is really cool. Very different characters, I think, for him to draw. Brian Boland does Arseface towards the end. The Bruce Timm one is highlighting Jesse and Tulip, and specifically a character you have not met there towards the back. These are also very
the Dave Gibbons.
Oh yes.
Which I think this is definitely Gibbons. Yeah, it's Jesse and Cassidy drinking Guinness and blood. These are great. These are
so good. So good. Oh my god. And the Jim Lee one should be soon after. Or no, you saw Jim Lee
before it. Yeah. Which
is also great.
God damn it, Jim Lee.
Jim fucking Lee. Jim Lee. With Scott Williams, no less.
I was gonna say I was going to check like I'm like the only complaint is I'm like, these colors look a little different. And I'm like, oh no, it's not Alex Sinclair. That's why. But it's still a great colorist. I'm like, it's just not the Jim Lee colorist.
Did you see the Arseface Brian Boland one? I'm so sorry. And then the Bruce Timm one right at the end is really great too. I do like that. Oh, anyway, sorry. Back to Preacher number 6. I just wanted to call that out quick because I know I told you to check it out, and I didn't know if you had. We have Jesse and Cassidy playing pool together,
having more pool and having more philosophical discussions about God that I like. Yeah. I like. There's discussions about responsibility, about how these two can really be friends. And then
Jesse. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, we get a brief overhearing of Tulip on the phone with someone.
Yes, talking about trying to kill the guy that she was attempting to kill before she met Cassidy, and Jesse overhearing this, and Tulip knowing that he's overhearing, so she opens the door on him, and they have an argument, which...
The argument is very much they want to fuck.
Which Jesse calls out. He says, stop playing games and admit all you want to do is go to bed with me. To which Tulip, you can see a moment of her almost saying yes, but then bringing up that tough exterior again and saying, I'd sooner fuck Cassidy.
Which my brain is like, we can make this a threesome.
I love how into the three of you are as a couple. It's great.
Ennis sold me immediately on this three-way character dynamic, which makes it. I would be fascinating to see if Cassidy was inserted into the last arc, like how that would change the last arc. It would work, but
it is so not Cassidy to the point where so remember how I said the last arc is the third season of the show. That they stick with just Cassidy and Tulip in there, and they adapt some of the solo Cassidy stuff into that season as well to give him his own stuff in that season.
So we can have that makes sense. I think God, you're gonna make me want to watch the show, but I think I might want to wait till we're done with Preacher. I don't know.
Definitely. Now that you've started the comic, you should wait until you finish the comic to watch the show because. Again, the show adapts things in an absolutely fuck-ass order. It's all out of order.
I mean, I feel like doing it out of order might actually work.
It works for a show, but if you do it that way, then you're spoiling things about the comic for yourself.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But anyway, So we catch up with Paul and John. who again are just not good cops, and Sai is watching them. And gee, I wonder why he could be doing that. We get some more.
It's because he's a reporter, and that's literally
he's a reporter. You're right. Yeah, that's obviously.
I mean,
right.
that's the excuse that Ennis has set up. But did anyone buy this? Did people? I mean, maybe they bought this in the 90s.
I don't know, and I doubt it. Once again, because this arc never gets brought up again for the entire run, and it's never adapted into anything.
Was it adapted into the audio version? Do you know?
I don't know. The point being, this is the Forgotten Preacher arc, and like you can tell why. It's just it's so lackluster.
It is honestly like we do some again, like we said, we've done some character development for our main trio, but like honest, like you can almost skip it completely. Like
I would say almost, but again, you're right. Like Ennis is doing some pretty important character work for Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy throughout all this.
But honestly, if I were writing Preacher, like let's say I'm Garth Ennis and I'm writing Preacher,
I would love to see you as Garth Ennis.
Like I could do probably all of the development that these 3 issues does in one issue, maybe 2. Like
that's possible, yeah. But then unfortunately, you run into the problem of like there's no conflict within the issues, and it's difficult.
Whatever.
To do, anyway, but yeah, again, cops investigating things. It's boring.
A man has had his scrotum removed because Reaver Cleaver.
Yeah. And so
again, I like the scenes with Jesse and Tulip. I like Jesse being a fucking tourist. Like,
yeah,
like, because like if I ever go to New York, I'd be a fucking tourist.
There's this great little moment where they're like flirting at the end of the page, and like Steve Dillon draws this great little smirk on Tulip's face as Jesse looks at her. It's sweet, and you're just rooting for these crazy kids. We have some more cops. Oh, yeah, this is when the cops are contacted by the.
This is when the kind of people are. And at first, it's both a red herring and kind of a ha ha as to because Bridges is eating balls. That has technically a triple meaning.
Ha ha.
Ha.
But our trio goes to Sai's place. Sai shows them around. Cassidy's going to stay in for the night as Jesse.
So he's going to stay in for the night and then day.
Yeah. So, vampire. In case you've forgotten. But Jesse is Sai is talking to Jesse about this guy that he knows, and like. There's some very like vague talks about like religious people that Sai knows that like say they've met God, and so Jesse's like, well, I'd like to meet one of these guys, and Sai's like, all right, well, I'll take you there, and so Tulip goes along with him, and you have the 3 of them going out with Sai, or they're going out with Sai. Cassidy stays in. Some more boring cop scenes that do nothing for me, like literally nothing for me. I can't remember what happens in those scenes.
I mean, it's they contact the killer contacts them again, gives them an address to go to, and it tells them to bring a big SWAT team.
Mm-hmm.
And
what
we have Jesse, Tulip, and Sai going out. Cassidy making himself some food. Cassidy seeing the the adult comic that the audience knows the killer bought.
Mm-hmm. Say the name of it, Jacob, just for the audience's clarity.
It's Anal Rampage again.
There are 36 issues of Anal Rampage. Jesus Christ!
36 volumes.
Well, it's a comic, right? Yeah. So I guess. Yeah, so if it's all collected in that, I'm guessing they mean to say issues, right?
I hope so.
Good God, could you imagine if there are 36 individual trades worth of Anal Rampage?
Part of me thinks this is another gay joke, like on Ennis's part.
I suppose. I mean, probably, yeah. We have Cassidy then with his dinner going to look for some ketchup. Ketchup. And as he goes looking for ketchup, he sees something he doesn't like. And
I will say, actually, can I comment on this a little bit? I think it's I don't know. I find it hilarious of Cassidy having ketchup because vampire. Like,
yeah. It's a simple joke, but sometimes the simple ones are the best. We go to Jesse, Sai, and Tulip. Jesse has left the car at this point
because he has gone up to meet the big man.
That's right. And so Tulip and Sai are left in the car here. and Tulip is what is she looking for? I forget.
So they're talking about Cassidy and Cass's condition, and his life. He has, it's like he just has the same urges that most of us do. It's dialogue throughout the entire screaming, "I'm the killer! I'm the killer! I'm the killer!" Also, hey, Tulip, I've got some Snapple in the glove compartment. You check that. I'll see if it's in the back. I'm the killer. I'm the killer. I'm the killer.
And he stabs her in the head.
Stabs her. Yes.
Yeah.
The art goes hard. I like
the art does go hard. Steve Dillon really crushes that last page. Actually, it's really good.
It's like I don't like this story, but Steve Dillon is still.
Hot take. Steve Dillon, good artist.
Good artist.
Issue 7 time. Can you believe we're only halfway through this book, Jacob? We've almost been recording for 2 hours.
There's a reason I wanted to make sure I had at least 3 hours blocked off because
is this going to be one of the longer episodes? Damn, go on.
Well, it's the terrible thing of I had nearly a page of notes for each issue.
There's a lot to talk about.
Well, okay, of the first and third arc, the second arc, my notes got shorter because they're just. There isn't as much. It's
opening issue 7 though. We see that Cassidy has found body parts inside Sai's fridge, and the cops are there now at Sai's apartment because they're gonna find Cassidy, and it's all gonna be blamed on him.
Which let's be honest. It's a good plot development.
Yeah, just setting up Cassidy like that, and he tries to open the curtains to see them, but he gets burned a little bit on his face because vampire.
And now we have to do the shock of gay BDSM.
So thankfully we already covered this plot twist, really. But yeah,
wait, no, we get one page.
Oh, we get one page.
Still haven't done it because because we need to have the. Sai's motivation is he's just crazy and is he gets off on killing, which
it's a very simple. Actually, it is a fairly effective villain monologue. I do like it's effective. I do like the way it's written. Yeah,
part of the problem is that this just doesn't work as a mystery.
But if Sai were better set up as a character, this could be a really effective scene because I like this monologue. It's a good reveal.
The question is, has Ennis done other murder mysteries?
Oh, I mean, I guess there are
Can you?
Off the top of my head, I can't really think of any.
So it's very possible that he just isn't an effective mystery writer, which is
sorry, you said specifically murder mystery because there are other mysteries he's written that I think are
I should say whodunit murder mysteries because that's
in that case, if it's whodunit, then no, I can't think of any really.
Yeah, because it could be that this is just a type of story that Ennis doesn't know how to write. Let's be honest, whodunits are tricky. They're tricky to do well, and sometimes people don't understand what makes them work, and I'm not sure if Ennis entirely does. Ennis, I think, understands the tropes that you've got to have a red herring, and you've got to have suspects, and you've got to set up a motive, but he doesn't quite put the pieces together.
Well, I think also a lot of that is just because it's a short story. It's 3 issues, and I just don't think you could properly tell the story that he wants to tell in 3 issues, and so he only has enough elements here to tell 3 issues worth of story.
We also reveal the red herring after the killer's been revealed, which is oftentimes it can be done in murder mysteries, but a lot of times it's usually revealed before, because not immediately before, usually enough to provide a key piece of information that helps our detective role slot everything into place. But we have Bridges.
We have Bridges here, who is
gay BDSM and specifically likes being fucked by big black men. And
that's all the twist is. He gets pissed at Jesse for being there. He punches him.
It is very much played out as, isn't it weird how gay he is?
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Yeah.
Now,
would you believe would you believe there's better gay rep in The Boys? I'm not even joking. I'm not even a little bit joking.
I like the way Cassidy gets away from the cops. It's clever.
It is great because he hides in the bathroom, or he goes behind the bathroom, and then he finds the place where Sai was keeping his dead body. The guy's not even dead.
He's not dead yet. He's just been scalped.
His face has been nailed to him upside down. So Cassidy finds a knife and sticks it in his own neck. And so when the police get there, it's just another poor guy that our mystery killer killed, and it's actually really great. It's fun. But then we have actually I really do actually love the scene where Tulip is escaping from Sai's car. There's something just genuinely, I suppose I'd say, realistic about the scene, about like the way Steve Dillon draws Tulip escaping and like pulling the knife out of her hand, which would be like a difficult task, losing that much blood and then trying to do that. Like it's cool. It's just a really great scene. There's not much dialogue. It's nice. It's a 1-page scene. It's awesome. We then go to back to Jesse and Paul Bridges,
and Bridges is very much like, oh no, he's seen enough to this motherfucker's seen enough to ruin me.
Yes, and Sai arrives and is going to kill Jesse.
Basically, to be like, I'm helping you apprehend the real killer.
Mm-hmm.
But Tool comes in and
is so shocked by Paul's gayness, I guess, that he can't do anything. Not that Tool has done anything in the story up to this point.
Well, he's realized he was one of the cops at Sai's apartment, so he knows that this guy's the killer. And then
Tulip actually comes in and saves the day, and points a gun at Sai. And as Sai tries to open fire on Tulip, Jesse, it's implied, accidentally uses the word in a moment of passion and says "fucking die" to Sai, which does. So Sai
just dies. It's just like, yeah, okay. We defuse the situation. Jesse gets a favor from the others to be declared legally dead.
Mm-hmm.
And they leave.
He makes Tool a hero by shooting Sai in the head and letting Tool take the credit for it. That's, I guess, the favor. I
think the worst bit for
I wasn't sure if we were going to comment on this. Yeah, it's a bad last page. It's a really bad.
It is. It's because it could be someone realizing, oh shit, I've been denying who I am. And
here's the thing. It could actually be a really good scene if the one panel wasn't included where Tool says, "Are you sure you're not just fucked in the head?" Yeah,
because Bridges essentially has a coming out that, oh god, and now I have to face this, and I don't think, and that's not going to be an easy thing. I think I'm gay, and that's when you get, are you sure you're not just fucked in the head? And it's
a rough way to end that.
I get it, and this is also trying to say all cops are bastards, and that means all cops, even our comedy pathetic cop.
Yeah. So again, it's complicated. It is unfortunately complicated, and there's no easy way to just be like, this is good, this is bad, because we've kind of agreed both things are true.
It is the reading is there. Like, you can simultaneously be doing this. Oddly enough, if you go back to a recent review of Star Trek: The Next Generation that at the time of recording I just put out, though it's the episode before the one I would have just put out when this is coming out, Angel One, it's very much trying to do an anti-apartheid thing while also being one of the most sexist and homophobic things I've ever seen.
Exactly. So that is unfortunately where we have to leave it, because we close out our story then by Cassidy waking up in the morgue, saying farewell to our coroner, Jesse being legally dead, and talking to Tool at the end, where he where Tool says, "Hey, somebody was calling. Says she's your grandmother. Wants to know your whereabouts." Jesse is visibly concerned by this.
Gives a face, and I'm like, "Oh, are we gonna have a thing?" Also, there's a guy that walks by who looks kind of like John Constantine from the back.
Oh shit, that's probably on purpose.
I was gonna say, I think that's on purpose.
That's probably almost definitely on purpose. Yeah, I never realized that actually. That's really cool.
I literally put it in my notes. I'm like, huh, is John Constantine in the Preacher universe? Like, I could buy it.
Yeah. God, I love the scene between Jesse and Cassidy then, where Cassidy kind of like swears off side, and he's like, it turns out they're just another fucker, and the scene ends with Jesse turning to him and saying, "Can't all be fuckers, can they?" And it's this really nice moment of them, of the two of them connecting. And Cassidy does choose to leave Jesse in the end.
It is going to San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. As you can kind of tell, Jacob, this is obviously temporary because Cassidy is a very important character to Preacher as a whole.
I was gonna say, like, you don't set up a 3-person dynamic like this and then break it up permanently.
He'll be back very early. He'll be back very early in book 2. This is literally just so Jesse and Toole can go on the next arc alone, which I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Like, having read the next arc, obviously, I'm like, I don't know where. There isn't much for, like, there isn't much in terms of plot for Cassidy to do. Like,
yeah, exactly. So Ennis makes the right choice. He just doesn't include him in the last arc here, and that's fine. So
we get a "Where are they now?" of everybody that's been involved in this arc.
John Toole is made an NYPD hero,
but he does get it. He does after a year. He then loses his arms in a horrific blazing accident,
which is actually funny. I do like that. Paul is figuring himself out.
I guess he's no longer a cop, which I'm like, I guess, but again, it says he's still in touch with John Toole, which maybe Ennis is trying to say something about them both reforming. I don't know. Yeah. I don't think it works.
Cassidy went west, as they say, and Tulip and Jesse went on the road. And so we go into Preacher number 8. This is beginning our last arc of the book, and there's a very clear difference in the opening pages of this issue, tone-wise, from our previous 2 arcs, I think.
Well, we open in the year 1974 with a young Jesse tied up in front of 2 men with a woman stuck and a man tied up in a block sack. We get the sack over his head. It's Jesse's dad, and we get him shot through the head. That's a fucking tone setter.
Yeah. I would also like you to see, take a look at the back cover of the volume, and the bottom of that back cover. It is a Glenn Fabry portrayal of that same scene, and my God, it is haunting.
That's that.
It's so fucking good. I don't know where that painting came from because he never drew it as a cover for any of the issues. And
I think it might be either an Omni or an Absolute edition.
Yeah, I know it's the cover of one of the Absolutes, but I think it was drawn before that, and I don't know what it was drawn for.
Maybe like a Vertigo special, like, because I know Vertigo as a line would sometimes do specials.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Maybe something like that. With like all their books at the time.
But yeah, it is a moment that defines Jesse as a character, and we immediately cut to him in the present, saying, and I quote, "You vicious you vicious murdering, fucked up, shit-eating, hateful, cocksucking, evil tyrant bitch of a whore from hell. This is the story all in the family." We are setting up Jesse's family.
We are also tributing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre through all of this last arc.
Like, oh yeah, big time.
I'm like, okay. So yeah, Garth Ennis went to the Toby Hooper School of Political Commentary, it seems.
Yeah. What if everything was?
Which I will say, I think being familiar with Texas Chainsaw Massacre might have helped me like this arc better.
That is interesting because I just think it's a super effective arc either way.
I think it might have grossed me out more than it did if I hadn't been familiar with Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. You know what? You're right. It is the family dynamic of Texas Chainsaw, isn't it? It's grandma.
This is the arc where we get the bestiality. That's why that's there. I don't love it. I'm like, okay, yeah,
I
didn't.
can't. I can't wait to talk to you about that scene for one specific reason, but it's gonna be funny. Okay, so Jesse is tied up next to Tulip here. Tulip has been beaten, it seems. Jesse is yelling at his grandmother, who we do not see in this opening scene. This is another flash forward before we go back to Jesse and Tulip on the road.
Quite literally this morning. So, oh god, this is one of those things that long fucking day, guys.
Yeah.
So somehow Tulip let slip that she's a hitman.
Yeah. And Jesse is uncomfortable with that. He doesn't like that Tulip kills people for a living.
Tulip very much shifts back. Cassidy eats people and you're fine with him.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a valid point. There's something so interesting I think about Tulip as a character. And that is that like I think she is so unapologetically like herself. She's not a character, thankfully, that is defined by Jesse, I think. And so, like when she has this chance to stand up to Jesse,
especially, I think she especially starts to become not nearly as defined by Jesse at this point. Like it was, I think it could have gone either way before this point.
Which is ironic, also, because this is when Jesse and Tulip are about to become the closest they've ever been.
Yes.
And it is a great time for Ennis to really establish these two as their own individual people, Tulip especially.
Yeah. So this is also the arc of backstories.
Yeah. Let's get all the.
You get a backstory. You get a backstory. Everyone gets a backstory. So
let's get to it.
Yeah. So, well, this is Tulip's as what she was doing after they broke up 5 years ago. Yeah, 5 years ago. That it's like, well, she was dumped in Phoenix, so she started working. She started working for one night in like a diner near a bus station. Was sexually assaulted by a customer, specifically very much having a hand on her ass. And it's like, no, I'm not going to take this shit.
I do love the line, hey, did anyone lose a hand? Because I just found this one on my ass. It's a great line. But yeah, she finds herself on hard times, one might say.
Turned to alcohol.
Yeah.
It was getting bad, and then she borrowed some money from the owner of a club. This will imply that she was a stripper at one point. Went through rehab, got better, needed a job from the club owner. It's like, okay, I can work. And it's like, well, we have enough strippers and waitresses that you don't need. I can offer something that I don't want to give to a goddamn little girl, and it's making hits.
Yeah, and Tulip shows that this is also something that we're gonna get into more Tulip backstory as the volumes go on. But like, Tulip's a good shot. She's given this target range, and she shows that she can shoot a gun, and so he hires her to start doing hits, and she goes out to perform her first one, which is where we sort of picked up with her and Cassie. So she never actually like successfully completed a hit. And so Jesse is like, all right, well, let's go find this guy and get things settled with him. So
get things settled, get this man off your ass.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool, but then it's your turn in the confessional.
Yeah. Oh.
And we're going to do that. And like, again, this would make its own great little arc to do. But like, quite literally, as Jesse is about to use the word to try to find, McAvoy, the guy who hired Tulip, the door bursts in, guns blazing. This is Jody, the guy that shot Jesse's father, and they get fucking kidnapped.
Yeah. Jesse also tries to use the word on Jody, and it does not work.
I had some theories.
Okay, I'm curious.
My big one was My big one was, is Jesse's family... Okay, I should have said, I somehow accidentally flipped at one point to the cover for, I want to say it's issue 9. It's the one that is a shot out of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
The family portrait, yeah.
The family portrait, I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Are
they so evil that, like, the word of God is no use on them? Is that what Ennis is playing with?
So this is interesting because there is, adaptation-wise, when they did this in the show, Grandma was not an agent of God, as we will find out in this arc. she was rather she was the exact opposite. She in the show they made her working closely with the devil in the show. So
I think that's maybe a little, unless I'm missing some context, which is very likely. That's a bit of that's kind of cowardice and doesn't. Ennis is saying things about evangelical Christianity with this arc and the evangelical fervor.
Yeah. Simply, I think the reason they did that in the show is just to more easily fit into the whole grandma is however many fucking years old and how has she lived this long, and it is that
she's 70.
Yeah. See, in the show, she's actually much older.
Okay, because I was like, Joey, do I need to explain to you what a score is?
No, I'm saying in the show they make her older, and it is that she's literally like making deals with people and like stealing their souls and like feeding them to herself, sort of. And it's a
okay.
Whole, yeah,
because I was like, maybe they're so evil, like that the word doesn't. The actual reveal as to who's stopping the word, because it's someone stopping the word from working.
Mm-hmm.
Spoilers, it's God. I'm like,
it's God.
Oh,
God is literally stopping the word from working on these guys.
Because God.
Oh God! Okay, I can't wait to talk about it. It's so good. Okay, anyway, fuck. Okay, so the word doesn't work. Jody takes Tulip and Jesse, sticks them in the back of a van with one of our other main characters here in the grandma family of things, TC, who he is a man. We're gonna take Jesse to Angelville. This is the home of. This is another small town on the Texas-Louisiana border. And this is where Grandma lives. She has quite literally a ranch house with 3 burning crosses outside of it, and a gate with a horseshoe and a skull on it. It's
a star. It's
a both
planned and clearly meant to represent Jesus and the 2 thieves being crucified beside him with the crosses. Because remember, folks, the Klan is a religious organization.
Yes, it is. Crazy, huh? But we have Jesse back home being tied up alongside Tulip. We also get a popular piece of preacher iconography, Jody's lighter here, the fuck communism lighter.
At the very least, Ennis is being ironic with this thing. Like,
oh yeah, totally. It is just this brilliant piece of symbolism for.
So I will also say this arc is specifically like, this is very much Ennis doing a fucked up twist on the Prodigal Son Returns, quite literally a biblical parable. Like,
yeah,
that's
they may.
Why, Joey? This was what made me think, like, yeah, I need to go fucking reread the Bible. I think when we're talking about this, at least there's some things I might want to have.
You will have plenty of time between this and book 2. So
I mean, I'm not going to reread it straight. I did that once in like high school. I don't need to.
Did you really? Oh my god, dude.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So we have Jesse and Tulip tied up here, and we see for the first time Grandma. Miss Marie, if you will,
who is 70 years old and doesn't look a day over 120.
Yeah. I would love to hear you describe this character for the listeners visually.
The old man from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but a woman.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah, that's actually way easier than I thought it would be.
Yeah, no, you're like, why do you think I made the Texas Chainsaw Massacre illusions? Did you think I was coming from nowhere?
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And TC is basically a character ripped exactly from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes, and I mean, Jody is
kind of Leatherface a little bit. I don't know if he's really the dad.
No, well. It's hard. It's hard because in the dynamic, it's clear Jesse is meant to be the Leatherface. Even though he's not. Like, we're talking. This is also Ennis doing cycles of abuse and manipulation and cult and anti-cult shit.
So we get some violence against women here because Jody punches Tulip in the face,
and Grandma also outright says, "You can't marry her because those aren't breeders' hips." Because once again. A lot of fundamentalist evangelical Christianity has very much obsession with women being baby factories.
Mm-hmm.
High quiverful movement.
Yeah. And so, all Grandma wants is Jessie back in her life, so he can continue the bloodline of her family and continue to breed, I suppose, to breed others, breed with others.
Oh yeah, no, it's literally we need to keep the family going, and we need Jessie to be a good little servant of God. Like that is her motivation throughout all of this.
There's this amazing moment then when Grandma, Jody, and TC leave them alone, and Jessie and Tulip are left in this room by themselves, and it is this great moment of all hope is lost. You get the sense that that Jessie and Tulip actually feel like they're going to die here, and so the only thing that
it's like you can't do anything. You're going to stay in this room overnight, and Jody's going to blow her brains out in the morning. And it's like, well,
yeah. And the only thing that Tulip asks of Jessie, if they are going to die here, is if he could just finally tell her what happened. And so, we go into Preacher number 9. Gorgeous cover. I love this one so much. Let's talk about it. Let's do some Jessie backstory. Not before, of course, seeing Grandma once again talking to a being of light to her side. It's God. She's talking to God. Physically, God is in her room. She's working for God. She is literally training people to serve in His name. That is what her whole existence is.
Yes. So we're flashing back to late 60s, Vietnam War era. Mm-hmm. A man called Private John Custer coming home from the war.
Mm-hmm. Meeting for the first time one Christina Langell, who is who's run away from her family home. She is the daughter of Grandma, if you will. It's also worth noting, this is another phonetics thing. She's Grandma. There's no D in there. It's an apostrophe.
Southerners.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I also like that the story is called When the Story Began, because that is another line from Time of the Preacher by Willie Nelson, sort of playing off of the title of our first issue. And also, I would like to bring up the adaptation one more time, because this is one of the biggest changes that the adaptation made, was that what we're doing here is showing John and Christina as our angel and devil figures that created Jessie to parallel Genesis's origin and why Genesis chose Jessie to be with, I guess. So Christina being our sort of demon figure and John being, Christina being our demon figure, John being, no, other way around. John is our devil figure. I mean, Christina is our angel figure. My apologies. But the show does is it flips it on its head, because Grandma is more satanic in the show. Christina represents the demon side of it, and John is literally a reverend in the show, in the adaptation. There's the military backstory isn't there.
Okay, that okay. I'm going to say that has a change. It makes sense, because I don't think Garth Ennis would like to idolize the United States military.
Exactly. Yeah, no, yeah. They take out the military thing altogether. But yeah, so that is essentially what we're doing here to parallel with Genesis, is showing Jessie's parents as that angel and demon. We have John here being from the military, Christina being involved in a group of anti-war
hippie protesters, but they fall in love and are genuinely kind of a wholesome couple.
Like, yeah, they're really sweet.
It's very much Jessie's parents. It's very much, sometimes people can come from the worst places and still make it work.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is they do. It's where we get some stuff about John Wayne and his dad's love, Jesse's dad's love of John Wayne movies.
Mm-hmm. We once again see this is where the "fuck communism" lighter comes from, because it is John's lighter, and presumably when he died, Jody took it from him. Yeah. So we have Jessie telling Tulip this story about Jessie's birth and how John and Christina lived their life with little Jessie, John Wayne movies, and just avoiding Grandma and Christina's family the entire time, until of course they didn't. I love that panel. It's in the collected edition. It's the bottom of 243. Just that black background and Jessie saying, "You met Jody and TC already." Their introductions, I think, are so fucking good. Just the last issue perfectly showed Jody and TC as this almost force of nature. in the terror they have brought on Jesse's life, almost more than Grandma has, because Grandma is not any kind of physical threat in the way that Jody and TC are. It's fascinating. And so we have Jody and TC here fighting. John Custer beats up Jody. TC is able to get the jump on him, like threaten him with like a shotgun.
And what makes them stop is the fact that there's a kid.
Yeah. And so
because, fundamental Christianity, wedlock is bad, we get basically a shotgun wedding.
Yeah. John and Christina.
Wedlock is bad, and remember, this family is a family of white supremacists who wear blood is everything. Blood purity is everything. Clearly making you have to be uncomfortable. So, we get a shotgun wedding. And they were forced to move into Angelville together and live through hell.
Mm-hmm. Until John decides enough is enough. He decides to try to take Jesse away from this all and escape with Christina.
This gives his son some nice last words.
This is quite literally an iconic monologue in terms of fans of this comic. I would love to read it out if we have the time. I need you to be brave for me, son, and I need you to know some things in case we don't get a chance to talk about them later. I love you, Jesse. You're my own son, and I'm proud of you. And you brought me and your mom more happiness than I ever knew there was. You be good to her and look after her. And you be a good guy, Jesse. You got to be like John Wayne. You don't take no shit off fools, and you judge a person by what's in them, not how they look. And you do the right thing. You got to be one of the good guys, son, because there's way too many of the bad. It is a line that sends shivers down my spine. It is, to me at least, that is kind of the thesis of Jesse Custer as a character.
That's
literally those are the words he lives by. It's so good. I also love that they do not show the death of John Custer again, because that image is burned in Jesse's brain. Instead, we see the aftermath of Jody shooting John, saying "fucking little crybaby" to this little kid, and Jesse says that is the last time he ever cried, because it's sort of when he put up that tough exterior and he wanted to be tough and be like John Wayne, because again, his hero, that is it is not John Wayne he's idolizing. It is the archetype that John Wayne always played.
Yes, it's not really John Wayne anyway.
Yeah.
Jesse didn't get to have a normal tablet. He did get to have a cute little dog.
He got a little pupper. He had a friend named Billy Bob,
who is
Billy Bob Billy Bob is a small boy with one eye who looks that way because his family is incestuous, and he is supposed to marry his sister one day,
and is happy to do it because of their bloodline strong. I'm also so glad Kian is not familiar with this, because I have a feeling he could have made certain jokes about me. And I feel like he would have.
Oh, God. I don't think he would have. I mean, I can if you want me to do it in his place.
Please don't. Please don't.
You're the one that made this about your eye. I wasn't even thinking about it. So, but yeah, we get, despite all this, despite the strangeness of it all, it is Jesse trying to find some kind of happiness in his childhood. His dog,
some kind of it's the closest thing to a non-toxic relationship is with this child of incest, which is telling. It's a little bit of shock value there, but okay, because we get Grandma teaching Jesse about her special friend, aka God. And
there's this great line, another one I'd love to read out. God's special because he's always with you, Jesse. He lives inside you, in your heart, and he sees everything you do, and he knows what you're thinking always. God loves you very much because he made you, and God wants you to love him, because if you love him and do good things all your life, he'll take you away to live with him when you die. Now, isn't that nice to have a friend like God? And Jesse, hearing that, is scared of that.
Jesse has the response that, like, Jesse has it's the response of an adult who has thought about the concept of heaven and hell for any period of time. Because kids don't, they kind of just swallow it wholesale, but it's like, no, it's kind of scary. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, no, Grandma, it's kind of scary. And she slaps him across the face. And Christina is forced to teach her son all these things. It is literal indoctrination. We get more scenes of horror from Jesse's childhood, where the dog Duke was bothering Jody one day by like humping his leg, and so Jody nailed Duke to a fence and killed him. And Jesse, in response, little Jesse, tried to attack Jody and call him a fucker, a dirty fucker, and a bastard. And hearing this language, Grandma decides to put Jesse in what is called the coffin. After taking his mother away from him and never seeing
his
her
mother
again.
who tries to protect him.
Yeah.
His mom's probably killed. Like, it's heavily implied that she's dead.
Yeah,
and
yeah. Though importantly, you do not see like how she dies. I think that's just that is something that's so. Oh God, it's almost a small mercy because the death of Jesse's father is so burdened.
You know, it wasn't a clean death. Is the implication?
Yeah, definitely. But Jesse is punished for his foul language by going in what is called the coffin, in which it's exactly what it sounds like. He's kept in a coffin, which gets sunk to the bottom of the ocean. Or the water, whatever lake they have around.
It's a swamp. It's a swamp.
He is fed air through this airtight, sealed coffin, and that is where the issue ends. We go into Preacher number 10, another gorgeous cover. I just have to say that every time. It's so good. The title of the story is "How I Learned to Love the Lord." The opening narration of this really hits me. Between the stink of my shit and puke and piss and the noise from what was crawling around inside, my week in the coffin kind of sucked. Jesse was kept here for a week. He is brought out eventually. You see the pale look on his face. He's literally deprived of all like food and water and shit. And he is literally tortured into accepting God.
Because it's very much we need to break. This is something that like evangelical Christianity in its harshest forms does. I feel like we should say we're both not anti-Christian. Like,
no, I'm not inherently against it.
Let's be honest. There are certain things about American Christianity that I do not like, and I think is wrong. But like, and mainly, I'd like to think Ennis thinks that. I'm not entirely sure.
I think he thinks. I would like to think he thinks along the same line that I do, which is essentially that if you have something that gives you joy and comfort in life, that's cool as hell. If it's this, maybe not so much. If it is the way in which Jesse is being taught this. This is wrong. This is explicitly wrong. Grandma is a terrible person. So in addition to Jody and TC's physical torture, there is Grandma's mental torture.
I think it's also interesting. There's also some religious symbolism with the coffin itself as a punishment. Yeah. Because it's a punishment that happens 3 times to Jesse.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of 2 times, and then this final time being tied up and broken that way. Because we'll get to it. I think it's supposed to be Jesus imagery. I think. I think it's hard. Again, why do you think I wanted to read the? Where the fuck is? I don't know if I have a Bible.
Don't open your Bible. This is a no Bible podcast.
You wanted me to engage with this work, Joey.
And you are, and you're doing great. Honestly, we'll talk at the end. Don't worry. We'll do wrap up. Oh god. Okay, let's talk about Billy Bob. So in Jesse's friendship with Billy Bob, at some point in their lives, Billy Bob fell asleep in Jesse and Grandma's barn one day, and TC is I have to do this.
Okay.
I've already committed to describing the scene. I've already committed.
Well,
to
no.
it.
Can I just say, Garth Ennis is using bestiality to make a masturbation joke. That's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Because TC's literally choking the chicken.
Yeah.
That is. I am 99% sure that is where this character fucking came from.
Is it not funny?
No, it's not funny. I don't find that funny, Joey. It doesn't fall into my sense of humor, Joey.
I mean, that's fine, but okay. So, Jacob, this is the scene that caused a DC editor to throw their book at a ceiling.
Rightfully so. I'm with the editor.
According to Garth Ennis, the story essentially goes that nobody had really been watching over Preacher this whole time. Their Preacher was just kind of flying under the radar and getting really popular, but like popular to the point where like they'd already had like quite a few issues out at this point. And so eventually, and here's the thing: if it wasn't being watched over by Vertigo, it definitely was not being watched over by higher ups at DC. So Vertigo editors were Stuart Moore, I believe, was on this one. So Vertigo editors were that would have been the Vertigo editor. Vertigo editors were like they were watching over this and like, okay, cool, this is kind of what we put out anyway. And sure, Garth Ennis is pushing it, but what are you gonna do? A higher up at DC sees that Preacher is one of the highest selling things at all of DC Comics, not just the Vertigo imprint, but the entirety of DC. These guys that had just put out Death and Return of Superman. So this guy goes
2 years ago, and they've just done Nightfall, and
So this guy is like, I don't know who this editor was. Garth Ennis didn't name him when I watched the interview, but Garth Ennis.
It's got to be a DC. It's got to be a DC. Like it's got to be a DC editor because.
Oh yeah. He said it was a big wig at DC. He was like,
it's definitely not Karen Berger because
Karen.
I can't imagine. What I know about Karen Berger is that she would have had to sign off on this.
So this high up at DC is like, wow, this thing is getting us a lot of money. I should actually check out one of our books. So he gets the first 2 trades of Preacher, in which this story is collected in the second original trade that they put out. And the second he got to the scene where TC fucks a chicken, he threw the book at the ceiling. And according to Garth Ennis, there's a dent in that guy's ceiling now. That is just there because he tossed the fucking trade up at the ceiling when he read the scene where TC fucked.
I will say it makes it satisfying when this fucker gets killed. Like
it does. It certainly does. He fucks a chicken, and then because Billy Bob was here sleeping in the barn at the same time, TC goes to piss after he is done fucking the chicken, and he accidentally pisses on Billy Bob, and Billy Bob has to wake up from that, and so TC kills Billy Bob because of this, because he was around at this time. And Jesse, in reaction to this, punches TC, calls him a cocksucker, and there's this great moment then, actually, between Jesse and Jody, where Jesse says, "Fuck you, Jody. You get out of my way, or I'll kick your redneck ass worse than my daddy did." And Jody takes this moment to be like, "Okay, fine. Let's see what you're all about." Because you could tell there's just this small part of Jody that is still hurt by the fact that John actually got the jump on him. So there's this brief fight. Jesse gets a few good hits in, but Jody does end up.
Mind you, Maria's watching with a smile on her, with a smirk on her face from the window.
Oh yeah. And so he breaks Jesse's arm until he says "Uncle." They put Jesse for a fortnight in the coffin, and Jesse then takes it upon himself to go tell Billy Bob.
Well, no, we have to.
Oh, what's up?
Fortnight in the coffin, and is asked, all that time down there, you never wondered what that weight was on the lid.
That's right. They put Billy Bob's body on top of the coffin. So Jesse takes it upon himself to go tell Billy Bob's family about Billy Bob's death, and they rightfully kind of like get pissed at him, or really rather his family. For causing this.
And it's that basically, like, he was scared, but that made him like, cool, I'm running the fuck away. I'm getting out. I'm done.
Yeah.
So he ran away. He was 17, lived out in the world, and wasn't good, but was trying to do okay. He met Tulip.
Yeah. And they have great chemistry. I love the way Ennis writes this early romance between them.
Well, and also Tulip reflecting on it is interesting. Her introduction of "You were a cocky little bastard, Jesse," which, yeah, he would be.
Yeah. Oh god, it's so great. I love this early romance between them. They talk about traveling the world together. Eventually, they decide.
They steal a car and hotwire a car and run away, and they start just fucking and living, and that's it. And it's this idea that I'll love you until the end of the world.
Yeah, which is again, that's another great mantra among Preacher fans. But Jesse decides he's going to take Tulip to San Francisco. They're going to travel there next. Tulip goes away to buy him a beer, and in the time that she's gone,
it's the thing. It's like to twist the knife. It's like, there's a liquor store at the corner of the square, and it's like when we get to San Francisco, Jesse says, because that's where I'm going to ask you to marry me.
Yeah. He doesn't say it to her. She never finds out that he said this. And that is when Jody and TC catch up with him.
In a great page turn of they're not on the bench, and then suddenly they are.
Yeah. Suddenly, and though we know Jesse is physically can stand up to Jody, there's something about Jesse that is paralyzed in this moment. And you can see it in the way that Steve Dillon draws the scene, that Jesse is so traumatized by these people that he just goes along with it. It's just subtly writing this trauma response within Jesse. I think it's very subtle. I really love that. Back in the present, Jesse finishes telling Tulip his story about how after spending more time in the coffin, he was forced to become a reverend by Grandma. They moved him out to Annville. The rest is history, I suppose. Grandma, Jody, and TC walk into the room.
Because it is now morning.
She says, "Good morning, Jesse." Tulip says with a gun to her head, "Can't I even kiss him goodbye?" And then, drawn the exact same way as the death of one John Custer, Tulip O'Hara is shot in the head.
Yeah.
And dies.
I'm my little note was like, did Garth Ennis just do a fridging? Like, please, no. Like,
I mean, if the next issue didn't happen the way it did, I guess technically that argument could be made. But no, Tulip is definitely dead there. Most definitely.
Like, technically, she gets fridged.
Technically, for about 5 pages in total.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Preacher number 11. Which is a fascinating step back from the intensity of the end of that issue. Grandma lays out her plans for Jesse. He's going to become a priest again. She's going to...
He's going to rebuild the dynasty to serve his glory for eternity.
And they're going to use the word to their advantage. I also love... There's something so interesting about this, that despite all the realistic violence in this comic, Tulip's blood is black. They always color it black, and it is this image, I think, of seeing her death from Jesse's perspective,
of him trying to ink it out of the world, almost.
Yeah. Oh God, that's so good. Oh God, we moved Tulip's body out of the room,
and then we get some time with Marie, specifically being like, well. It won't work on us. We can do whatever we'd like. This time we finally broke him. It's like, no, this is different. He has nothing to run away to like this time. And she's almost relieved. She's also like, make sure you don't leave the body alone with TC. Like,
yeah, just to be safe.
It's like, okay, so you know how fucked up your family is. Like you are aware.
Yeah,
at least I don't think Ennis could commit to being totally evil, because it's Ennis. I think at some point is like, you have to ask, like you know, right? Like,
yeah, like
something is going.
surely he wouldn't have TC fuck Tulip's dead body, right? And it sounds like I'm setting us up for a joke here, but thankfully I'm not.
Thankfully, I'm not, because we have literally an image of Tulip's dead head, and then she's breathing and she's alive, and it's like, wait, what the fuck? And there's a light, and it's like, what? And
we'll catch back up with that in a moment. But before that, Jesse is left in another room to sort of wallow in his own misery, right before John Wayne shows up behind him.
And now we got to talk about
partners.
This.
Oh god. Okay, so yeah, John Wayne's appearance in Jesse's head is the result of years upon years of a miserable childhood and physical and mental torture by his family. And the only happy time that Jesse can continue to think of
is going to see John Wayne movies, starting specifically with True Grit, with his family. So John Wayne in this comic is not really John Wayne. It is, and I think it's telling because Dylan always never draws his face.
Yeah. Oh, that's another great aspect of the portrayal of John Wayne.
It is meant to be, this dissociation, and Ennis plays it 100% straight. Like he doesn't do shock value shit with it. He just does it, and again, it is so weird coming from
Jacob that it's good.
That it is good, and it is written in this way of care not to be shocking, to be sympathetic and actually interesting and partially representative of what got Jesse through the hard times, as well as what Jesse is holding back from, or was, and I guess by the end of it isn't. It's weird. Was holding back from Tulip because, for all intents and purposes, in Jesse's mind, she is dead. Like, yes, we know she's not, but like that's the storytelling.
Yeah.
Again, especially with the way Ennis did things in the middle arc, and even a little bit in the first arc. Like, how you pull this Ennis, and it's. I mean, I'm going to be honest. This is what brought the book from, because that middle arc was going to heavily damage the score of this book in my mind. Like,
that's fair. That's fair. I don't think it's as bad as you're making it out, but yeah, it's not great.
Like this issue is what brought it up, and then the actual satisfying conclusion, because
such a satisfying conclusion.
I will say, I should also say I have minimal notes on issue 12.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's fair. I will say, I love that you're bringing up this particular conversation, because I've once seen someone online describe Garth Ennis as like, good Garth Ennis is like fucking top 10 comic writers of all time. If he can write something like this, it's fucking brilliant. Bad Garth Ennis, you would like to wipe from your mind. Thankfully,
yes.
I don't think anything in this book gets outright bad Garth Ennis. Like it's not bottom of the barrel.
It hasn't hit. I have heard of some things in The Boys that I would maybe describe as the worst of Garth Ennis.
I have complicated feelings on The Boys. I don't love it, but I'll say there are good individual issues of The Boys. That's what I'll say.
I have heard people describe The Boys as just overall bad.
It's a little more nuanced than that. My thoughts are a little more nuanced, I should say.
But yes,
so back to
because we see some flashbacks, and
of like John Wayne talking to Jesse while he was in the coffin. It's a great scene. We get another scene of Grandma talking to TC and Jody. Then TC has like overheard Jesse talking to himself, basically confirming, like, if you haven't figured it out at this point, Jesse is imagining all this, obviously. Although there is an interesting point where Jesse calls out that like there was one scene early on in the comic where John Wayne does tell Jesse something he didn't previously know, and that was about Genesis. But I think the implication there is really
Genesis has already bonded with Jesse, so
and is talking to him, and so like otherwise, Jesse points out like everything that he talks about with John Wayne, he already knows, and he's like figuring out with himself. But back to our revived Tulip O'Hare. She sees God.
Tulip goes through the rationalization of, wait a minute, is heaven a fucking bedroom? It's like, wait, no, I don't feel dead. That can't be right. It's like, oh no, I resurrected you because I am God. And you will love me, and Jesse will love me because I am God.
It is. There are so many other things I want to talk about with Preacher's version of God, the character, that I.
It is very much the Garth Ennis doesn't like the problem of evil, that the all-knowing, all-loving God cannot exist by definition because there is evil in the world, and under Christian theology, hell is a thing. You can't be all-loving and have a hell. Sorry, that does not track. And it's like it's like God says, "Okay, I've restored Jesse's power over him, over his grandmother, and their family. It's like, you can do with him what you will, and then go in peace, and don't try to find me." And it's like, what do you say to that? What do you think he'd say? It's like, what do you think he'd say to me? It's like, I think he'd say, cut the shit.
Yeah. Because also the implication is, especially by the next issue when we continue this scene, is that what Tulip is seeing here is not the literal physical manifestation of God. It is a form that he's showing to her. Because that is very much takes the approach of like the true form of God, if there is one, is unknowable and we can't really comprehend it. So we don't ever really.
And if you were to, it would kill you probably, or
yeah.
Make
so
you go mad.
We get another scene with Jesse and John Wayne. A really great scene, I think, with a slur.
But it makes me wonder because of what John Wayne. Sorry, what the manifestation of John Wayne represents. Because I don't want to say what John Wayne represents, because that's
what does John Wayne represent as?
Well, here's the thing, because John Wayne was a bigot, right? Like,
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
I don't know much about John Wayne.
He's a massive bigot. But yeah, so we get this scene where Jesse says, like, the only time that John Wayne spoke to him when he became a reverend was one time, and he said one thing to him, and I won't say it on this podcast.
It is a bad word for gay people.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if it represents repression, like Jesse's own repression.
It is, yeah. I mean, totally.
Clearly,
it is Jesse fighting with himself.
I don't know if Jesse is meant to be a bisexual character, but it could potentially be read that way, maybe. But it could also be just nice said.
So. Yeah, I think it's just it is Jesse using that as like I would say in that moment talking to himself in the form of John Wayne, using it as a just common derogatory term that he would hear where he grew up. That's probably about it.
And basically, John Wayne is like, stop quitting, just stand up and fight, and you'll win.
Yeah.
And it's great. And what it remembers is what I imagine is the first time Jesse and Tulip fucked.
Yeah. Just on this truck in the middle of the desert. And it's this, again, really sweet moment between them. And we get that until the end of the world line. As Jesse has fallen asleep in his room, he's dreaming this moment in his life. TC wakes him up. Jesse finds he's able to use the word again. Forces TC to drop his shotgun, beats the piss out of TC, and God, it's a satisfying scene.
Yeah. Interestingly, TC not dead yet.
Not dead yet. He's still around next issue. Jesse and John Wayne part ways, and that ends our issue. Going into Preacher number 12, our final issue of today.
The cover's a spoiler, sadly.
It is. Although, I have a feeling when you look at it, you can't really imagine this is a scene that is going to be physically represented in the book.
And it is.
It is. For those listening, is a scene of Grandma, our 70-year-old wheelchair-bound grandma, flying out of her ranch house, red flame behind her, screaming into the air. It's a strange visual. It's great. So, last issue. we open back on Tulip and God, who is no longer glowing and shit, and like the implication is that she's seeing him in more of a true form, if you will. We get an iconic God line here, which again is another big Ennis is saying shit about the Christian God. I'm leaving. You go to Jesse Custer. You tell him this has been a warning. You tell him that unless he forgets this ridiculous attempt to hunt me down, things will be much worse the next time. I am a loving God, Tulip, but don't push it. As he leaves, it's again things I want to talk about, can't talk about yet.
Because I haven't read them yet.
You haven't read it yet. Anyway, I would, in my mind, I would love to do a 6-episode block where we cover all of Preacher, but
I think that would be too much for me to handle at one time. Honestly,
sure. Jesse leaves the
this
house.
was a lot. Like this was a lot.
Oh yeah, understandable.
And we get basically the rest of this issue is just so goddamn satisfying.
It is. This issue is catharsis and
I love the line. I owe you pissant, white trash, cocksucking sons of bitches all the hurt in the fucking world. So who wants to get his ass kicked first? And then Jody smiles.
Jody gives him this shit-eating grin as he turns around. We get Tulip beating up Grandma, which normally I'd be like, man, this is kind of ableist beating up a woman in a wheelchair, but Grandma's just that evil. God calls her evil. If God calls her evil, she's evil.
Yeah. But also, kicks her out of the wheelchair. And she has an oxygen tank. It's like, well, we're just going to let the oxygen tank start to spill out a little bit. And here's the thing about oxygen. Oxygen, fire. The actual reaction of fire is just oxygen emitting heat.
And hey, speaking of fire, Jesse says to Jody and all of his weird racist friends around here, "Burn, you fuckers!" They all just spontaneously combust. They all light on fire.
Oh, I thought that was I thought that caused like the crosses to start to fall, and because that's. What
I know. I think the implication is that they literally just start lighting, bursting into flames right in front of them. Because that's what he's saying with the word is "burn, you fuckers." Like,
yeah, so they all start to burn. Jody jumps into a trough to stop burning.
He gets back up, and great moment where Jesse says, "I could tell you to shove that thing up your ass, Jody, and you do it." And Jody says, "But you ain't gonna. No. Hope for you yet, boy." And we get this amazing. Steve Dillon owns the rest of this issue. As we get this great fight between Jesse.
I think
and
it's
Jody.
payback for Garth Ennis forcing Steve Dillon to sit with these last couple of issues. Honestly, like
yeah. Again, Ennis really puts it in perspective in that introduction. Like these guys had to sit with this shit. Like Garth Ennis took a few days out of his month and just wrote an issue. If you drew it, you had to live with it. So living in this headspace for 5 months straight, it's got to be rough. It's nice. It's really nice to see. We get Tulip facing TC.
Well, first off, we're gonna kill Grandma by smoke inhalation, which is gonna be very fun.
Love to see that.
Yeah, and TC thinking he's gone to hell, and Tulip gives him both barrels. It is incredibly cathartic.
Yes.
More catharsis with Jesse beating Jody and stabbing him with a plank of wood and getting the nails.
Jody being insane. Yeah, pulls the nails out of his face. Says kind of different. Again, great fight. It is Grandma yells out of the window, "He's burnt my beautiful house down. He's finished this family. He's no kin of mine. Kill him." And we get this.
Have you noticed that her accent is no longer there?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
Interesting. I wonder if they're trying to say something about fakers and hypocrites. Yeah.
Like gay cops, right? I just had to get one more in there. All right. We get Jody and TC. Jody and Jesse fighting as Jesse eventually bites into Jody, kicks him on the ground. Jesse chokes him out. Does not use the word.
Tells him to fucking die.
Yeah.
Very good lettering there for making sure it's distinct.
Yeah.
And
Grandma with her oxygen tank.
I mean, she's been described as a witch before, so what do you think witches?
Yeah.
There are 3 things to do with witches. You throw water on them and they melt, but that only works in fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
You drop a house on them.
You drop a house on them, also fantasy.
Which, I mean, you could do that in real life. I could find scenarios to make that work.
But most importantly, I think fire is the solution. And so, with her oxygen tank and her house burning all around her, of course,
she blows up.
She blows up. Her body goes flying out of the house, exactly like on the cover. Jesse yells, "Burn, you fucking witch, burn, yeehaw!" As he takes his lighter back, or he takes his father's lighter back from Jody. Says, "Fuck you, Grandma. Fuck you and all your monsters." Tulip reunites with Jesse. There are hardly any words between them. Jesse says, "I don't care how. I don't give a good goddamn." They kiss in front of the smoldering remains of Grandma's house, with the title of the issue being "Until the End of the World."
Perfect issue to end the volume on.
And that is it. That's Preacher Book 1.
Okay, so we have to do final thoughts, obviously.
Jacob, we did it. You made it through Preacher. You made
this is going to be a long episode.
It is a long. It's almost 3 hours.
Once again, it's a terrible thing. If Preacher is good, I will say I don't think I can recommend it to everybody.
Oh yeah, totally. I hear it's. I almost considered not giving it to you at all. I was like, there's a point in making the schedule. I was like, do I want to do this? Because I know he is.
Well, I even think it's a good examination of being able to a good exercise in being able to recognize when something is good, but not for me. Because there are definitely things in here that are not for me, but there are things that I think are brilliant. And it's like one that I would definitely reread, and I'm definitely interested in continuing. I need to see where this goes. It's got me hooked, but I'm like, I totally. I don't know if I will love it as much as you. I cannot.
That's fair. Here's the thing. Like I said, I it's great. I don't even. It's not one of my absolute favorites, though. It's just a really great book. I will say I'm very glad you liked it. I'm relieved that you liked it. I was so worried to even give this to you.
I will say we may have to have a similar rule as we have for Frank Miller, that there's got to be some space between Garth Ennis books.
See, I think it depends on the Ennis though at that point, because there's there are degrees of Garth Ennis. I would say
it's very possible, but like super edge Garth Ennis, even like this, where I'm like, I need a little bit.
I do know for a fact what your next Ennis read is. I'll say that.
Okay, interesting.
So we'll get there. We'll get there. Oh man, but that was Preacher Book 1. Oh man, very different book to cover on the podcast, and again, interesting mostly I think because it's the first thing we've ever read, like not part of a larger universe on one of the main episodes. It's very much its own thing because there is nothing like Preacher out there. All right, Jacob. What do we got? What do we got? We're revealing 2 episodes.
Oh shit! Yeah,
because we're scheduling things.
Because we are scheduling things. Because basically, for those who don't know, usually at the end of March, I end up taking a vacation. And so usually around this time, I've got to be able to work ahead a little bit. So I will say, this is going to be the end of our DC block.
And the rest of DC, we got episodes 89 and 90.
Okay.
What do we got? Oh, I'm excited. I can't wait to hear what you say.
All right. I feel like it might want to be trying to wrap up some stuff. So I'm thinking they might be the end of Perez's Wonder Woman and the end of Johns' Justice League.
Are those your only guesses?
I think so. Yeah.
Wow. Very surprisingly confident, I think.
Probably wrong on at least one of them.
Yeah, that's really interesting because you're definitely wrong on both.
Am I wrong on both of them?
Both counts.
Okay, cool.
Well, we've actually got on the next 2 episodes. So
wait, can I have one more dartboard?
Sure, one more.
Got a dartboard.
One last one.
Batgirl. Gilson wants Batgirl.
Gilson's Batgirl. Okay, I'll say this before we actually do the reveal. So as faithful listeners are aware, this is the end of our Kurt Vertigo block. We did Hellblazer, Swamp Thing, and Preacher. And as you may remember from our Swamp Thing episode, this was originally a 4-episode Vertigo block because there was a Sandman episode as part of this block originally, and me and Jacob both agreed it was not wise to do a Sandman episode anytime in the near future. So,
I mean, partially, I don't think either of us are prepared to
engage with that.
To engage with that book and the work of, let's be honest, sexual predator Neil Gaiman. Because,
yeah.
I want us to be very clear that even it's interesting because this block started the latest rounds of allegations hadn't happened, and even then we were already uneasy enough to not do it because of, whilst we even at that point stood with the victims who had come forward, the reporting from Tortoise Media was, and we can even easily now say this because of things that reporter Rachel Johnson said, fueled by transphobia, meant it was already a difficult situation to send people into for resources. So you're not touching the work of Neil Gaiman for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. So with that said, I did have an open episode. I was like, well, 89, I'll still keep the Vertigo block starting at 86, and we'll do 86 through 88. 89, I was like, is now an open slot, and 90 was always set in stone. 90 is 90 no matter what. But 89, I was like, I got to fill something in there, and I thought, what better way to replace something that we are so horribly burned by than do something that I know that you, Jacob, are so incredibly excited by. Let's talk about Batgirl by Gail Simone next time.
I was! Okay, the dartboard finally paid off.
We're gonna do the the first 2 volumes next time. We're gonna do volume 1. We're gonna do The Darkest Reflection and Nightfall Descends. This is issues 1 through 13 and issue 0 of Gail Simone's Batgirl.
Okay. I've got let's see, 89. Hang on, I've got 2 books. Though technically one, because
you have the omnibus, because you
bought the omnibus ahead of time. No, I didn't buy it. It was given to me as a gift.
Oh, that's right. It
was given to me as a gift.
But yeah, so that was always set in stone, and sorry, that was the one that I threw in there. I was like, let's fucking do that. Let's fucking go for it. That's gonna be great. But 90 was always set in stone. 90, I'm also incredibly excited by. We're gonna do a continuation. You were right about the continuation aspect.
Okay,
but something rather different. DC blocks tend to start and end a certain way, so let's talk about Batman R.I.P. by Grant Morrison on episode 90.
Okay. Oh.
We're going to continue Grant Morrison Batman on episode 90, and I'm so insanely excited about that.
Yes.
Yes.
So again, also someone who hasn't burned us. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very nice couple episodes we have coming up here.
Okay. I am so excited.
I know you
after
are.
After that we will be starting Marvel.
So just to give a rough idea of the schedule to those listening, we're coming up on episode 100 in the semi-near future. I'm incredibly excited about this.
Episode 100. Episode 100 lands in August.
It does, which sounds a long ways away, but it'll be here before we know it. So we are doing a brief Marvel block after Batman R.I.P. We're doing episodes 91 through 95 as Marvel, and then we're doing 96 through 100 as a 5-episode DC block to build us up to episode 100. I have special plans for episode 100. I'm so excited to see what you think of what we have coming up. But in addition to that, I would like to give listeners their first hint of what we have coming up post episode 100. We're gonna open the floodgates on Marvel. After episode 100, episodes 101 to 115 will be all Marvel. A 15-episode Marvel block is the longest run of Marvel we've ever done. It's a mix of old and new and things that I'm just generally really excited about. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. So all that said, I think that about does it for us today. Let's do promotions. Jacob, what do you have going on right now?
Mainly, I'm actually very happy to say my blog has been doing more than just
sound
Star
so
Trek.
Distracted by the fact that you have Gail Simone coming up.
I had to send a DM to a friend of ours who was like, I want to know what's coming up, Jacob. Tell me what's coming up. I'm like, well,
wait, what friend?
The Enterprise System. They have been very curious. But I'm so excited for this. My blog, I've been getting back into reviewing the 8th Doctor and Past Doctor adventures a little bit. I don't know if I've reviewed any more, but I did do the original novelization of the TV movie and the 8th Doctor adventure, The Book of the Still. Both very interesting books, as well as, of course, I've been reviewing Star Trek: The Next Generation for the first time. At the time of this episode releasing, I will have done an episode
11001001.
Thank
right?
you. I was just going to say it is binary. I was going to call it binary because it is a piece of binary code.
I've said it so many times for the videos that we've already recorded. I have it memorized.
Okay, cool. It's interesting. I will also say, as our link trees are down below, I will say try to keep an eye out on our link trees the week this episode goes live because of the scheduling things. We're probably going to be trying to record later that week so I can have as much time to get through everything.
Yes, absolutely. Keep up on our Blue Skies. We're recording things in advance coming up because of Jacob's usual annual vacation. So so just keep an eye on Blue Sky for Q&As. That kind of stuff is very important.
Also, very interesting that Gail Simone is. So I have my notes in a notebook, and I ran out of space right at the end of Preacher. So Gail Simone gets to be the start of a new notebook, which I think
I can't believe I also went through that entire episode reveal without saying that this is the Gail Simone approved Fresh Face Comics, the Gail Simone approved Blood Donut Studios, and the Gail Simone approved Joey Morgan, considering she follows me on Blue Sky. I'm so sorry, Gail, if you are listening to this, I'm so sorry, but I wouldn't be. I'd almost feel ashamed of myself if I didn't actually make use of your wonderfulness and you being so kind to us. So
please don't put us in a blood feud, please.
It would be greatly appreciated. As far as me, though, on Blood Donut Studios, we do the spin-off of this. We do Fresh Face one-shots. We cover Superman by Joshua Williamson, Wonder Woman by Tom King, Batman, The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, The End of the Long Halloween Saga, and The Uncanny X-Men by Gail Simone, of course. So plenty of Gail Simone in your future, Jacob. I also personally cover X-Men by Jed MacKay, which I've fallen behind on because it is so hard to find the passion to talk about that run.
You may well. I was going to say, your passion is gone.
It hurts.
And we're also going to be talking about the big X-Men crossover. Some of that may be delayed a little bit. X-Man Hunt because of my vacation.
The end of that event is following your vacation.
Potentially the last 3 issues, very much depending on when we can record those weeks versus when I'm on vacation. It's a whole thing. I do apologize for those delays on my end because
we'll keep everyone updated. Honestly, the best way to keep up with things that we're doing and delays and things is following us on Blue Sky. So, and as always, those are in our link trees down below. But also for me on the channel, I do Star Trek reviews as well. Also 11001001, and you can find my review on our Patreon for the next Star Trek TNG episode, which is
too short a
season. We're doing old people makeup now. Okay, that's
great.
You're gonna love it, Jacob. But yeah, so you can get that a week early if you join our Patreon. You can check that out.
It's a script, but it's a script by DC Fontana. No.
Oh yeah. It's not terrible, but it certainly is not great.
Okay.
So let's see what else we got. R2BD. We have R2BD. Considering this is coming out a little later, I think recently we put out our video on The Last Command, and then we have Shattered Empire coming up. So check out all that. We're talking Star Wars things. It's a lot of fun. And I think that about does it. So as always, link trees are in the description below. Follow us if you want to follow us, Blue Sky especially. Subscribe to the channel, Blood Donut Studios. Any and all support means the absolute world to us. Leave a rating and subscribe wherever you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Any and all support, once again, greatly appreciated. Leave a comment on Spotify if you want me to read out those comments on the podcast, as well as actually comment on the YouTube copies of these episodes, because that's a great way to reach out to us. Maybe we'll read those out too. So yeah, do that, I guess. Respond.
Maybe we should maybe start reading those comments out next episode if we can pull them together from Spotify.
Yeah, totally. We only have 2 or 3 on Spotify.
2 or 3. Yeah, mainly the ones that are left. Okay, we'll also say if you leave a comment and we don't, and you've missed our recording, we will try to go back and still read them.
And still talk about it on the following episode, I would say.
Yes, on whatever the following episode is. Well,
yeah, totally. So, yeah. I think that about does it, though. Thank you all so much for listening. Until next time, this has been Joey Morgan.
And Jacob Licklider.
Goodbye.
Bye.